Woohoo. Hey, good night, everybody. How's everybody doing? What's up, Peltwork? What's up, Narcosis? Hey, can you guys hear me well? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Peltwork, I'm using my Blue Yeti mic, so hopefully it works well. All right, good to hear. I'll just give everyone a few minutes to just join. Cincinnati Reefer, Narcosis, Steve, Reef Keeper. All right, so I don't know if you guys, so I'm not home. I'm visiting my cousin in Syracuse, New York. Well, it's a town right next to Syracuse, Liverpool, New York. So, Rico kind of put me on the spot today with the whole Aquarium Tech / Apex live stream. So, even if I was feeling like I didn't want to do it, it was out there. So I had no choice. Hey, what's up, Chris Fishroom? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chris Fishroom. I really appreciate that. No, I don't have any good stuff. This is just coffee. This is just coffee. Just plain old dark roast coffee. I had a brew earlier, like an American brew, not the British. They call everything brew. Bally's and Folgers. No, if I was home, maybe, but not tonight. Not tonight. All right, so tonight we're going to talk Apex. I don't really have an agenda prepared per se, but I'm gonna give me a second. I'll put the link out, and we'll all join in. But I figured I would start by just talking about just Apex in general and how I got into using Apex. Hey, thanks, Steve. Steve, man, listen. I'm gonna take a minute to just shout out all the mods, not only on my stream, but Rico stream and Paul's stream, Aquarium, Reef Community Worldwide, and whoever else streams. I listen, man. These guys do a great job. Steve, it doesn't matter what time it is. These guys come in and do a good job of moderating and just keeping everything clean. So not only for my stream, but I'm saying thanks on behalf of Rico and Dave and Paul and whoever else streams. So if you're in the chat and you see these wrenches, these are the people that keep it clean and keep out all the trolls and everything. So I'm just upfront, just saying thanks, guys. Sometimes some of you guys can't see what's going on because like the mods hide stuff, but I'm just seeing just the mods just taking care of stuff. I can see it. So thanks. Shout out. All right, let me put the link out. Hopefully this works. And whoever else wants to hop in can hop in. And if you have any question about Apex or anything you want to ask, just let me know. Just post it in the chat. But I wanted to start with, I know we have this discussion sometimes where we talk about is an Apex necessary for a reef tank? And I think the answer is absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think initially I was in the camp where absolutely you don't need to have an Apex. where you don't need to have an Apex. But in 2012, I think I was looking through my emails and stuff, and in 2012 I had a tank crash, and that's because my heater failed and overheat my tank, and it crashed. And I sort of took a look at it, and I'd spent a lot of money on. I had 2 banks of AI hydrolytes. I had a Tunzi skimmer. I had a CJ return pump. I had a bubble magus skimmer. I had some nice fish and corals. It was early, but to me it was nice. We all know the joke about the Aptasia. About me buying the Aptasia. But I had what I considered at the time to be a nice tank. And then the heater failed and crashed it. Heater failed and completely killed everything in my tank. And then, I also wanted to, turn my lights on at a certain time. So by the time I looked at the cost of 2 or 3 timers, a heater controller, and a pH controller, I was half of the way to what was called a Apex Lite. I know right now Apex doesn't have the Apex Lite anymore, but I was halfway to what was called an Apex Lite at the time. So that's when I kind of bit the bullet and just bought an Apex. And hands down, it's been one of the best purchases I've ever made. It saved my butt so many times. And the few times where I've had, an accident, I think when I look back in hindsight, it's always been me not configuring my Apex properly. Like my Apex had the ability to sort of save me. The latest one is just a few weeks ago when OG's Fish Rooms and E-Money Cichlids, we were at the Brooklyn Aquarium Society meeting a few weeks ago where we saw, Joey, the king of DIY, was there. And, my wife called me and said, hey, there's water on the floor. Like the carpet is wet. The carpet is wet. And, my kids were playing. I guess they bumped something in the tank. And the reactor, I have this nice, reactor. The reactor turned over, started spilling water out of the tank. The ATO started dumping water in the tank. Turns out I had a leak detector and I just didn't configure it properly. Hey, Howie, can you just mute a second?
Yeah, man, no problem.
Hey, thanks. And so in that instance, that was just the latest in a line of a lot of things that happened where my Apex could have definitely, saved my butt. Also, I have the family involved with the tank a lot. Right now I'm in Syracuse. I'm like a couple 100 miles away. And, my wife is home. And, we have 3 tanks. 2 of them have Apex on them. The third one doesn't because I've just decided to see how long I can go without putting an Apex on that tank, go without over-teching. That's the term I'm going to use, over-teching that tank too much. But, my 9-year-old son has his own tank. And one of the reasons he's able to take care of it is because it has an Apex. So, my wife can call me and say, hey, I saw something wrong with the skimmer, or the skimmer's overflowing and it stinks. And she can turn it off and say, hey, when you get home, check it. Or, your pumps or something. So she knows to go into Fusion. She gets the alerts too. So she just turns it off and tells me, go ahead and fix it. So it's gotten the family more involved in the tank and the hobby. Because otherwise, if I had a DJ switch or something, my wife wouldn't want to, she wouldn't want to open the cabinet, go under the bottom and flip switches. She wouldn't do it. So it's nice that she has the app on the phone. Everything is nicely labeled so she can go in and say, hey, skimmer, let me turn that off and you need to check that when you get home. Yes, Reef Keeper. Apex is expensive. Yeah, we'll talk about that. The Apex is expensive. I started with at the time when I started with the Apex years ago, when I got into the Apex ecosystem, it was a lot cheaper. I think there was 3 levels. There was a light that you got a brain, you got a pH probe. I don't think you got the dimming, but you got also an EB8. But like I said at the time, I had AI hydras which were $400 a piece, so that was $800 on lights, another $400 on skimmer. I had probably it was I had a lot of money invested in my tank. So let's say the Apex at the time was about 10%. Now, was 10% worth the insurance? I thought it was. And to be honest, the larger you go, the bigger your tank is, the bigger you go. I think the Apex becomes, you know, more more cost effective is the word I'm looking for, but you know, worth it, more worth it. I don't know if I'm using the right term. I don't know if I'm using the right terms, but it becomes more worth it the bigger and the more money you have invested in the tank. Now, it's not necessary, but for me, I'm a tech head. You know, my tank has been like my outlet for tech, but you know, um, it's not necessary, but it's definitely worth it. Thank you, Dave. Uh, thank you, Dave. Let me see. I think I had a question. Um, Francisco Garcia, how do I make my Apex tech me when there is a power outage? Now, Apex has a new feature. I think it's called Heartbeat. Now, let me just open my Apex window here, and I don't remember. Hey, Scott, if you want to jump in now, and you want to jump in, Scott or Howie, if you guys are in the chat, if you want to help me with sort of anything that the questions are being asked now, now's the time. You guys can jump in and help anytime. Feel free. But I know Apex has a feature called Heartbeat. And that's when the server has lost communication with the Apex. It sort of notifies you that it notify. I know that's what the feature is called. Now, just give me a second to pull it out. I was prepared for a lot of questions tonight. I don't think that one was one I was prepared for. Just give me a second.
Heartbeat's an online application, correct?
What was that? Can you repeat that again, Howie?
Heartbeat is an online application, correct?
Yes. So I think essentially what Heartbeat does is once you configure it, the Fusion server pings your Apex, and once, because this has happened to me a couple of times, because every time I sort of disconnect my Apex or unplug it to do some kind of maintenance, I get a text message that says, "Hey." The one thing I did not like at the time was I think it took like 20 minutes or 15 minutes before it kind of notified me that my Apex wasn't getting a Heartbeat. But in either case, I was happy that it did notify me that something wasn't working. So give me a second. Let me get you the exact menus have changed a little bit, so just give me a second. Okay, so in the new Apex interface, all right, let me share my screen here. All right, so I am now sharing my Apex Fusion interface. So once you're in the interface here, you just hit the little gears that you see to open your menu, and then hit the little wrench. And this is here. This is where you would enable it. Power enabled. And once you have a text message or a number, or you have the application installed on your phone and you have notifications on, it will send you a notification that your Apex is down. Do you guys need a link again? All right, give me a second. Let me get the link. All right, there you go, Steve. Thank you, Dave. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Good. I just checking the link. I bit.ly shortened it so we could share it now.
All right, thank you. Someone said that you couldn't see that. Oh man, I already. So, Jonathan Soto, I think that's who asked the question. You click on the 3 gears on your Apex. Click on the 3 gears in your Apex Fusion dashboard. Click on the wrench, and then towards the bottom, you're going to see an interface that says power. Just hit that. Make sure that's enabled, and that's going to send you notifications, whether you've configured text messages or you have, the app installed on your phone. It's going to send you notifications that your Apex, has disconnected from Fusion. I'm not sure what the interval is. I know the last time it happened to me, it was about a 15-minute delay. But it was, you know what?
Do you know if this will work across the Junior and Classic and...
Yes, it will.
It's all the same.
Yes.
I get notifications on disconnect on my Junior, so.
I just bought a Junior, so I just wondered.
Yeah, the Junior is pretty much identical to the full versions of Apex. There's a few modules like the new testing system that won't work with the Junior. You're also limited to 4 modules plus display, but you should have full Apex website, the Fusion functionality, for only $240.
I love the Junior.
240. You're talking about to buy the Apex?
Yep, the Junior.
Okay, I got it for 2. So okay. Thank you.
I got a good a few years ago, when BRS has those Black Friday sales. I bought the Junior. I think I got it for about $200. I ended up selling the display to somebody because I have a main tank that already has a display module. So the Junior ended up costing me like a little over $100. So if you have an Apex already and you want to get a Junior, you can always buy a Junior and probably resell the display. You don't absolutely need a display. I just use the display from my main tank. So I absolutely love my Junior.
Yeah, the trick is when you go on you look at the specs, it'll say 4 modules. So where a lot of people get tripped up is they think it's 3 modules because they would use the display. Technically, for that count, the display does not act as a module, even though it is.
So it is. Okay. So, the Junior is limited by a certain amount of modules. The Junior is limited by a certain amount of modules. Does a display count as one of those modules?
No, so you can have 4 modules with a display. So like for me, I have the pH controller on there. I have the 2 dose pumps, and I have the WXM module that controls all of the Ecotech equipment and the display. But the thing is if you take off the display, it does not allow you to put a 5th module on there. So you have 4 modules plus display, but not using the display and just using the web interface doesn't give you an extra module.
Unless you get the external, then you can control a couple other things with the external module.
What's the external module? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, I'm trying to think what it is. I have to look it back up here.
Oh, you're talking about like the dimming module where you can control pumps and lights with it?
Yeah. It's the thing where you do a lot of personal programming and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's the dimming module. Yes, I absolutely love mine. Right now I'm using. I just have the built-in dimming ports that came with my Apex. For anybody wondering, I'm using the 2016 Apex on my big tank, on my 75, and I use 2 of those. You get 4 variable speed dimming ports, 4 VDM ports. I'm using 2 to control my Kessel lights, dim them up to one channel controls spectrum, blue to white, and one controls intensity, 0 to 100. And the other two control my gyres, basically. Two gyres, I have them hooked up to my Apex, so I'm sort of mimicking the flow that BRS released in their video a few weeks ago. So that's what I'm using with my dimming ports. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of other devices that work with the VDM port, dimming port.
Right, and the Junior does not have a VDM port built into it. You have to actually buy that separate. Now, the other thing, though, is I believe it's 11 modules that you can run off of the WXM. So that's 11 lights or 11 pumps or any mixture of those.
I love the Junior. You know, when I first got the Junior a couple of years ago, because before the Junior, you know, I had the light and I had the light. All I had was the light module. And when I got the Junior, you know, I actually called up Neptune Systems. I know someone at Neptune. I actually called them up and said, hey, man, like something's missing. Like, where's the brain? And he said, no, you know, everything is in one. So when you actually buy the Junior, all you get is just what's called the EB4, and everything is in the EB4, like the network port, the brain, and the EB4 is one. So it kind of it was just interesting. Like that was just a funny story. When I first got my Apex Junior, I was a little frustrated and thought there was something missing from the box, but it turns out someone, hey Dave or Steve, do you guys have the link, or do you guys want the link again? Let me try this.
Yeah, so if you're looking at it being like, you know, $800 to $1,000, whatever the full version is, yeah, you're going to get lots of built-in functionality, and the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do with it. But if you're looking at your little tank going, I don't want to put $1,000 automation system on a 30-gallon, the Junior is pretty much the way to go. It just you get 4 fully controllable programmable ports, you get the full Apex Fusion experience, and you get to pick what modules are most important to you. And if you're smart, you can get them to overlap. Like the WXM module can do those pumps, or it can drive, they have a little cable that allows the variable speed ports that you were just talking about to control your Kessel channels.
Right. I'm running this thing on a 75-gallon with no sump. So, I mean, I'm looking at, I want to hook the lighting up to it, and possibly I want to get a I want to get the sensors for the main things, you know, just the phosphates. You can get a sensor for that, right?
No, you cannot get a sensor for phosphates. You can get a sensor for temperature, pH, ORP. I think, you know, that's what comes with a standard Apex. I think you can also get this, like Apex has so many other modules. Like you could get a salinity probe, you can get dissolved oxygen, you can get a PAR meter. What else?
There you go. At least a salinity probe and the pH probe.
PA probe.
Now
yes.
They are coming out.
That would be quintessential to what I'm trying to do at this moment in time. I'm pulling softies and a brand new tank.
So you know what, though? So based on what you've said and what you said earlier, you said you have an Apex Junior, right? So I think you know you have to step back and like sort of do an analysis of because it looks like if you buy an Apex Junior, I know you said you got it cheap for $200, but by the time you buy the pH module and then a pH probe and then a salinity, you know, the salinity module and then the salinity probe, you might be almost 3/4 of the way to a new Apex, which does all of those.
It came with the pH and salinity.
It came with the pH and salinity. Then you don't have an Apex Junior then. Because Apex Junior only comes with a temperature probe.
Here's a question: is your Apex a flat, long box, or is it a short, little, stubby box?
Let me look at this thing for a minute.
Because if you have one of the regular Apexes, it's going to be like a long, thin breakout box, and that's actually going to be your brain, and that will have many different ports on it, and it'll come with.
It says classic on it.
Yes. Okay, so you probably got a classic used then.
No,
not classic used. I'm thinking of
junior. The classic. No. Classic a junior.
No, the classic is a full Apex, so you don't have any of the restrictions in terms of module count. You don't have any. You have a lot of those ports and stuff built in that you'd have to get as expansion.
I mean, it's got a lot. It's got a lot of plugs on it.
Yes, if you got an Apex, a regular Apex for $200, did you also get the EB8, which is like the things that you plug stuff into?
It came with a.
So they're like a
port, an eight plug-in module to where you can plug in 8 different.
Yeah, that's the EB8.
Listen, man, if you got that for $200, then you got. I mean, I know it's an older tech, but if you got that for $200, then I would say you got like a great deal.
Yeah, that's a steal.
I'm over here stealing stuff. I'm telling you what.
Yeah, but don't. Keep in mind that a lot of people are looking to sell the older, Apex to go with 2016, so they could get the that new stuff that Apex is coming out with. The Trident,
a friend of mine gave it to me. He's upgraded. He got this big. I'm telling you what, everything's orange and black. It's hot with the system. It looks good, and I'm like,
except for the new modules though, and very few new modules require the actual 2016. That Apex that you have is going to be able to do an amazing amount of stuff.
Yeah, it's I guess classic, whatever they call that, Apex Classic.
Yep, Apex Classic. But again, I still think I know a lot of people are trying to sell it. I still think $200 is still a great deal.
It's great, yeah.
It's a good deal. That's what I thought. I was like, man, I've looked around. I've seen people. They got it, and it's what I need right now for doing minimal
I'll take another
stuff.
one. I'll take it.
It's sold. It's bought. It's on the system.
All right. So I think you have temperature. Then you have pH. You could do either. I think you could do either a second pH probe, or you could do an ORP probe. You have the 2 dimming ports, so you can control lights, pumps. The only thing, you can control Kessels. The only the only thing you don't have on that.
As he locked up and froze.
We're all good.
I think so.
Everyone take a screenshot.
I thought it was me. I was like, oh no.
Well, I guess these 2 clownfish and this one little shrimp are having a day of their lives.
Well, the thing is like, so even if you only use part of it for right now, say you were to upgrade to a bigger tank and you'd want it to monitor more things in the future, you could do that. Or the thing is you don't have to necessarily have one Apex for one tank. Say you expanded to a frag tank in the future, or a quarantine tank or something like that. You can actually have that control and monitor your other tanks as well. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one thing.
That's cool.
What do you need for that? Just the USB cable?
Just more modules. So say you wanted to you were setting up another system. Okay, I don't know what pumps you're using, but say you were using the WXM Ecotech pumps, you would just add those modules to your WXM feature. If you had lights, you would just add those. If you ran out of if you used up all of your variable speed ports, you can buy a variable speed module and put that on there. So you can expand stuff that you already have with additional modules just by buying those additional modules, since you don't have any module limit with the Classic. So say you were running on your main system a calcium reactor that had the pH probe on it, and you had the pH probe monitoring the main tank as well. So, I want to monitor pH on my new tank. You would just buy yet another pH monitoring module and you'd be all set. You just want to label it once you get in there. You can label every single port that's on it, and you would just label it so that you would understand that it's your secondary tank, not your main tank.
Holy crap! I'm sitting here. I didn't even think about to even do it. I'm looking online right now. The classic controller is $550, brand new.
Yes, you got a full version of the Apex, not the latest version, but yes, you got a full Apex unit on your hands.
And it's got all of it. It's got the 8 plug set up with the 6 USB out ports. The holy moly!
Yep.
I stole this thing.
Yes, you did. That's why I thought you were talking about the Junior when you said the price on it.
Dude, it's stolen.
Scott, do you use
Are you
the
guys
leak detectors?
missing an Apex?
What's up?
Do you use the leak detectors?
I do not use the leak detector. I've got a Junior, and it's pretty much maxed out with what it's got.
Gotcha.
When I have the new tank at some point in time, I'll probably upgrade to the 2016 version.
Nice.
I'm pretty much, if there's a leak, there's not a whole lot I'm going to be able to do about it. So
exactly, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, what is that going to, if I'm at work or something and there's a leak, there's a leak. It's not going to stop it.
Right. I mean,
Can't do anything about it.
Yeah, other than be agitated knowing that you're
exactly
all over the place. So, now it could be nice if you're there physically and say you like have a hose open or something like that and it starts getting water on the floor, then that could be nice. Where is this coming from? I've had a few times where it's been like, oh crap, mop it up.
Or you could also have like a small leak on one of your anywhere, basically on your bulkhead or something, and you don't know.
Yep.
And then so I could see the use of it, but I don't know if it's worth buying.
Well, for me, like I have on my tank a algae scrubber, and the algae scrubber is literally mounted above the BioCube on a container store wire shelf, right? And what happened, I don't know how or why, but for whatever reason, the water was coming out of the scrubber, and instead of running down it, it was running along the tube that the scrubber screen was coming out and down the outer wall of the turf scrubber. And I didn't know, but it was spraying water all over the wall, onto the floor and everything else like that. And I was actually going to bed, and then I like opened my eyes and looked at it. I'm like, that doesn't look right. Why is there drops coming from the bottom? And this is like 15 minutes later. And I get up and I run over there and I look at the wall, because there's a wall where everything was plugged in right back there. And there's a little constant blue glowing spark going from the salt water in the plug in the outlet. So, that was something that was averted, that you would actually, I'm lucky that I noticed that while I was drifting off, but a leak detector would tell you instantly, hey, there's something going on.
You can also program, sorry, I got disconnected there. Internet went out here. You can also program, a leak detect. I don't know if you guys spoke about this. I came into the tail end there, Scott. But you can also program leak detector to, if it detects a leak, like shut off your return pump, send you a text alert, like do certain things.
Kill the power and stuff.
Yeah. Put all those and basically put your tank in bypass mode until you've had a chance to do it. Reefkeeper says hook up a webcam and you can see what's up. Yes, which is actually something I've done. So my kids have old iPod touches around. There's actually an app called Alfred, and I read some instruction where there's a weird way you can hook up the app called Alfred. I bought this little thing that I stick it to the side of the glass of the tank, and you could feed. You could, Alfred is an app that allows you to dial into like an old iPod touch. So there's a weird, it's very detailed, but someone walked me through taking the app Alfred and feeding it through my Apex interface. And so that's a way, with old iPod touches laying around, I was able to configure, some webcam so I can see what's going on in the tank when I'm not there.
I'm kind of doing the same thing right now on my on my QT tank, but it's not going through the Apex. I just have it going through the outside. So I'm able to, it's a FOSCam, so I'm able to just log into my phone and I could just see everything that's happening. Hey, Seymour, I have a question on the Apex. I have these two things. They're called links. Let me see, link A and link B. What is that? Is that just what links the power modules to Apex?
Hang on a second. Let me just double check before I answer.
It's a 24-volt accessory output A on the EBA 32.
Link A and link B. Oh, so you know on the if you look at the side of your EB8, I think it's at the. I'm trying to visualize now. I think it's to the bottom left of the EB8. There are some like ports, some proprietary ports from Apex. For instance, I have something that's called a PMUP, Practical Multipurpose Utility Pump. What a name. So there are some modules that Apex has some proprietary ports. Some of them are the one link ports, and some of them are some 24-volt DC ports. So that's what those ports are. You can plug one link devices into it. For instance, the Neptune Systems dose, their dosing pump.
Okay.
You can either plug them in. If you had an older Apex, like an Apex Junior or like the full old Apex, you can actually just use a power supply and then plug, like an Aquabus, like the USB. It's not exactly USB, but an Aquabus cable. You can connect it to the Apex that way. If you use the one link, if the port name has link in it, you can use a one link port and it gets power, and you can control the devices through that one port. So that's what those are. I don't think you have any one link devices yet. Like you don't have any of the Neptune system pumps or a dose. So you can't use that. But if you buy some Neptune specific devices, like their pumps and their dosing pumps or flow pumps, they have something called a wave. That's what you can control those. That's what those pumps are. That's what that port does.
This Apex the Apex Classic will actually deal with your dosing?
Oh yes. That's actually what I have dosing my Triton stuff now with, is the dose pump.
Oh man.
Yeah. So what the benefit of that is actually let me see if I can log in here. I don't normally log in from this computer.
That's cool. That's real cool. That's good to know.
No, it's really kind of cool.
Yeah, I got rid of my dose. I had the dose and the 2 containers, and I got rid of it.
Yeah, for me, they were too big. I needed more cabinet space.
I mean, I haven't been dosing, but I have no dosing, but it will do it if I need it to.
Yeah, but what you have to keep in mind is that when you dose, you're gonna need to dose more than 2 things, and the dose is only has 2 heads on it, unless you're gonna buy 2 of them.
I got a Jabo 4-channel dosing.
No. So it will not control your Jabo doser. When he said dosing, means if you get the Neptune system specific doser, it will control that. But no, the Apex cannot control your Jabo doser. The most you can do is if you're using 2-part, and a lot of times if your doser fails and puts too much into the tank, your pH will spike. So what you can do is set it up so if your pH goes over 8.4, 8.5, turn off the doser and send you a text message so you'll know that when you get home, change it. It's something you should check, see if your dosing pump failed. But as right now, your Neptune Apex cannot control your Jabo doser.
Especially the 4-channel. I've got like calcium, alkalinity, mag, and a little bit of maybe phosphates. It just
okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm gonna present you to everybody.
Okay. Interesting.
So what I've got here is I've got the 1 Triton pump set up right now. Never mind this. I don't have a probe hooked up right now, so it gives erroneous readings for both temp and pH since I'm not monitoring. But so for the Triton, I have Triton 2 and Triton 3, and I've actually labeled these based on the Triton method bottles. So I mix the 3A and the 3B, and I just poured the 2 into the container. And eventually, at some point in time, I'll hook up the second dose, and I'll have it dosing 1. But the nice thing about this is you just leave these in auto. Okay, if I don't want to dose because my levels are rising and I just don't want to deal with it, I can manually shut it off and nothing will dose. I could turn it on, but that would be a very dumb thing to do. So, because then it would just run and run and run. You can kind of see where it has the logs of what's been getting dosed recently. Right now it's dosing calcium, and then eventually it'll switch over to the whatchamacallit later on. So if you click on this little button here, you can go into your program modes. Every time you want to do a program mode, you can generate one of these. I don't know why you would have more than one since you're only dosing 1 container, but anyways, so what this is a 4-hour dose. So at 8 o'clock in the evening, I start dosing calcium until right around midnight. What this does is I can modify the interval. It's going to come up with here, and it's going to have the start time and the end time of the interval, what I'm doing, adding, or you can remove. This controls the direction that the heads rotate, and then what your volume amount is. Okay, so over this 4-hour period, I want to dose 2 milliliters of solution 2. All right. Now, what the Apex is going to do is instead of dumping 2 milliliters worth of solution in all at once, it is actually going to create this interval system. And what this does is this is going to actually generate a certain amount of doses spread out over this interval time. So I'm going to dose every 12 minutes, 0.1 milliliters. The last dose is going to be the last 0.2 milliliters, and it'll do it 11 minutes before the end of the time. This is the speed of the pump, and there's going to be 19 doses. All right. So I can come back out here. Now, after that midnight, since I don't want to dose them all at the same time, they say you're supposed to allow at least 5 minutes before between dosing of different chemicals. So I've got 11 minutes before will be the last dose before midnight. So my alkalinity, which is the 3A and the 3B mixed together, will come on at midnight and start dosing until 8 a.m. So since those are 2 mixed together, I have to dose twice the amount. So it's going to be 4 milliliters of this solution over 8 hours. And my summary is going to be, whatever we got it. There's going to be 40 doses over the middle of the night. It's going to dose every 11 minutes like the other ones, 0.1 milliliters, and the time remaining is 40. Okay.
What are you growing? Are you growing SPS or LPS?
I'm just screwing around right now. I've got a little bit of SPS in there. All my stuff's dying. Don't worry about that. This is just to show the features. But basically, the nice thing about this is say, like with the Triton method or whatnot, you're supposed to be looking at alkalinity. So if you're testing alkalinity daily and you notice that you're going up, okay, well, obviously 2 milliliters is a little bit too much. So rather than having to go into like a JBL doser or GHL or whatever they are and try to go through those little touch screen menus and stuff, you literally just come in here, say, modify interval. Oh, now I only want to dose 3.5, and we'll see how that works out over the days. Click OK, and it's going to update all of your dosings. So you really don't have to think about it. You don't have to do math, and you don't have to deal with stupid little interfaces. That's the beauty of this.
We have a question in the chat about the we have a question. Jonathan is asking about virtual outlets, and wow, Jonathan, I haven't used virtual outlets in a while.
I haven't really gotten into those either.
Yeah, I haven't used. So I don't know if virtual outlets has changed, but when I had Tunzi pumps and I wanted to change flow outlets throughout the day, I used virtual outlets a lot. But listen, I would be lying to you if I could tell you I could. So I would need, in order to answer your questions and kind of give you some details on virtual outlets, I'd probably need to do a primer myself. I haven't used those in years because once I took those Tunzi pumps off, I had no need to do virtual outlets. So let me just promise you that, Charles Willis says he loves virtual outlets. So Charles, if you don't mind coming in the Hangouts, can you come in the Hangouts and just explain virtual outlets a little bit?
And while he's getting in there, I've got here the email alarms. I've got them set to auto, but if I were to turn this to on, or auto actually, then I would start getting those disconnect emails again. And it's really annoying because it sends me an email and it sends a text to my cell phone, which is... Can
I see what you have set up? Because I just set mine up, and I set up my alarms for everything. I mean, like every little thing on my email. Oh, you don't have anything. Okay.
No,
So I set up.
more emails than
Yeah, but it's good to, because right now the way I set up my email alerts is I have emails on alerts on all my outlets, or majority outlets, your skimmer, your everything. So basically, if anything turns off, I'll get a text right away, so you'll know something's up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Actually, that's a good
what
thing.
I started out as, but I'm starting to think I went overkill.
Why is my quiet drive missing?
And Seymour, with the virtual outlets, I actually created some virtual outlets for the ramping of my what do you call those things? The Kessels. So I have like intensity, color, and then I have like day, night, sunset, sunrise, day. So I created those virtual outlets with the specs that I need in there. And then what I did is I just used those virtual outlets.
Yeah, I have some virtual outlets created. So for instance, the other day, I think CJ and I were talking about how to set your aquarium to, get it to a point where, you can take photos easy. So what I did is I created some virtual outlets. I created a profile where, that once I hit like a button, or once I trigger something, it sets my aquarium for lighting time for 1 hour, and it stays there for 1 hour, where it sort of like sets it the white. I think it's white, like it's almost like 10%, like it's almost fully white, and it turns off one bank of the T5 lights, which makes the Kessel light, turns down the pumps to, I think, 5%, turns off pulsing. So they just so basically it puts the aquarium in basically mode that I could take pictures properly. So yeah, so I use virtual outlets for that, but I just really did it off of memory. I can't. And if you ask me, if you were to ask me now what a virtual outlet is, I wouldn't be able to.
Alkalinity, and it just, I don't know. I feel more like I'm chasing numbers, because I'm chasing numbers because I get stuff that says it's good, and I'm okay with that. And then it goes a little low, I give it a little more, and then I'm way beyond.
You're way over. Right. That's why having a dose module, it's not where you can do a little more. It's I can like give a little more, like 0.1 milliliters more. You can fine tune it.
That's probably the problem. I think, okay, this little bit will do it, but it's more than a little bit.
Right. And that's where a dose that's super accurate can actually put things in order. The other thing that the dose can do is the dose can actually do your water changes for you too. There's a thing that's actually becoming more and more popular, is doing continuous water changes. So throughout the course of the day, the dose pump is going to take a little bit of water out, and it's going to put the exact same amount in. So you'll have two buckets. You'll have one, your fresh water mix, and then you'll have your wastewater, and it will, over the course of the day, literally, or week, or however long you program it, do a continuous water change.
The funny thing is I've been dosing my water change bucket, not my tank. My water change bucket.
Oops.
I set my water change bucket up to where it is what the tank needs.
Mm-hmm.
The tank tells me what it needs, and then through the Apex, and then I'm putting in the bucket what it needs, and then I'll move the water through slowly.
So you're using that like an ATO?
Yeah. I mean, I'm throwing it in my ATO, and on every other weekend, I'll slowly ramp things up or down depending on what the tank's saying off of the Apex.
Yeah, there's just so much stuff you can do to program these things. It's really interesting.
And what is that new thing that's coming out? Is it called Trident?
The Trident.
Yes. Hang on a second before we go into that. I think we had a question earlier up that was asking about the flow meters. Let me see if I could scroll up and find the question about the flow meter. I think he was asking about what are the flow meters? I actually had the flow meters. I don't remember the question, but I actually had the flow meters. So initially I had a manifold, and the thought was that, I'd be able to use the flow meters to sort of, dial in the flow. When I put the flow meters on, I was really disappointed in, the amount of flow that, with head pressure. I didn't realize that head pressure actually produced so much, loss on pumps. So it didn't really help me balance. Let's just say it didn't really help me balance my manifold too much. So I eventually, the other day when I redid my sum, I took the Neptune flow meters off. Another reason I wanted to use them was in case to know if my flow went down because my pump was blocked or something. And then I realized that with the new Apex, you can actually monitor the power draw of a pump. So if a snail or something was supposed to get into your pump, if you know your pump, I mean, you can't do it.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, Howie, you can't do that with the Apex you have. You can only do it with the newer one that your buddy probably got when he sold you the old one. But you can actually monitor power and know that how much your pump is drawing, and you can set an alert to let you know that that something's wrong. Maybe your pump used to draw 50 watts and now it's not. So you let it know that, hey, send me an alert. But I think the flow meters can be useful in some applications. It's just that for me, the application that I initially thought I'd use them, they weren't very useful. It didn't really tell me anything. So I, in the sake of simplicity, I took them off.
And I believe with the Trident will actually plug into these measurements fields that I was scrolling back and forth here, but these are amazing, which a lot of people I don't think know about. This is part of Fusion, but say you have the HANA checker. Does anybody know how to calculate the ultra low phosphorus numbers and find out what their PPN is? No. So what I do is I come in here, I add a measurement. I say my reading on my HANA is 54. I have no idea what that is. Apparently it's 0.17 ppm. So you can actually have it do your different tests. And what it allows you to do is all of them. So you can pick your test kit.
Tied in with HANA?
Yep, everybody. API, ELOS, HANA, Red Sea. So you can pick your color. You can do whatever you want, and it will track whatever your settings are.
I mean, I got 2 HANAs on the way right now. I got the phosphates and the ALK.
So like for that one, but in this, for like magnesium, I use the Salifert. So here's the reading. So if I get a reading of 0.15 left, that means I have 1,275 ppm. So you don't have to sit there and look at charts. You don't have to sit there and do math. You just pick the test that you're doing. You pick your reading, you put it in there, and it does all the calculations and tracking for you.
What I also like about that feature is by having like everything in the Apex, by tracking, I write them on a sheet of paper, but I also put them in the Apexes. There's also, I don't know if Scott, you can just demonstrate a little bit, but I know your pH probe isn't working. But what you can do is you can actually put, overlay different graphs, so you can test how your alkalinity wanes versus your pH. So you'll be able to see just how different, once you're putting all this data in your Apex, you can then, put different, like how temperature impacts pH, or how, your alkalinity. If you're doing consistent alkalinity readings every week and you're putting them in your Apex, you can overlay the 2 graphs and see how my alkalinity goes up and down is how my pH affects that. Or, let's say you somehow had the dissolved oxygen probe. So that's another thing. When you put the test kits, put your test results in Apex, you can, when you get to that advanced stage, you can also put, overlay graphs and see how that stuff kind of
works. So So say I was like, I had this set up, which I don't, but say my pH, I could see that my pH goes up whenever my XHOs are on, but not my scrub light for some reason. You know what I mean? You can kind of go in here and figure things out and try to analyze data. So.
I'm just going to say, hey, look, I don't know how to bring my screens up and all this stuff, but, I'm telling you what, brother, thank you for bringing this up because it's helping me a lot.
And the other thing is, you can put notes in here. So you know how Rico is always saying document everything. Well, you can obviously see that I don't. But what you can do is you can put notes in here. So like if you do a water change and then you notice that, you log that a coral looks bad. And every time you do a water change, you notice that this coral looks bad. You can start to piece together, notes from different things.
Like why it's doing what it's doing.
Right, exactly. Obviously, I'm negligent in terms of keeping notes of my system, but the feature is there if I chose.
I don't think I've wrote anything down. Honestly, I've never wrote anything down.
What are some Scott? Let me ask you. What are some of the anything new on the right? What are some of the shortcomings you see of your Apex? What are some of the things you wish it did that it doesn't currently do?
I wish it would detect what
track phosphates.
Detect what it needed and dose accordingly.
That is coming in theory, but it's still dangerous because the question is do you really trust?
Yeah, right.
The programming?
I know.
So that's using this for monitoring is great. Using this for control is pretty good too. But when you start getting into life and death of your tank, I think it would be nice for it to tell me what's happening and then me still dose it manually.
Yeah.
Or
you got to have that human intervention.
Yes, I would like to come in here and change the dosing parameters. I don't know that I would trust it enough to have it modify the dosing parameters for me. Because what happens if a sensor breaks? What happens if you get a bad set of reagents? There's a lot of factors that...
But it would be cool. It would be cool.
It would be. It would be.
It would be.
It would be.
But you can have it. You can have it literally feed your fish. You can have it control solenoids. You can have it controlling valves. You can.
I mean, there are days, man, where you just got so much going on.
I know CJ is even using a breakout box and is using that as an ATO. So he's using a breakout box and a few float switches. And that's what he's using as his ATO right now, which, to be honest, it might not be as pretty and it might not be packaged in like the neat package, but a breakout box with float switches and the proper programming, you can get pretty close to the same functionality as the Neptune, Apex, what's ATK? That's their top off to make an ATO. You can get pretty close. I mean, there's some redundancies that the ATK comes with, like that big float valve. I like it. I think it's big and bulky, but I do like it. But with a breakout box, you can actually mimic, you can actually create like a really good ATO solution that works.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a big thing of mine right now. Like the ATO, like I got to get that under control.
One thing on those breakout boxes, when I was looking to get one, I actually went with the Vast Marine instead of the Apex, just because you have the individual power ports. You take each. Let's say like if you have the flow switches or whatever, you just plug into each individual port as opposed to having all those wires going into that same with negative or positive or whatever it is power, like the Apex does.
Yes, I have the Neptune. You're absolutely right, exclusive. I have a friend that uses the Vast Marine or another third-party breakout box, but I only learned about it after I had the Apex breakout box until I bought the Neptune system breakout box, and I like his a lot better.
Yeah.
I also, the first time I tried to use some float switches, I actually bought some, some regular cheap float switches. And he invested in some really, better built float switches that had like snail guards and stuff. So, yeah, I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you that yeah.
I have no need for it as of right now because everything I need is already done. The only thing that I'm not liking is the ATO with the sensor and the flow switch. They're too close to each other, and every time like my what do you call those? The gyros go on. The alarms just go way too much. So I'm thinking I might just change that up.
What ATO are you using? Are you using like the Tunzi?
The Tunzi, yeah, the 3155.
Oh, so I know. So you actually know that you can actually, with the Tunzi, you can actually change the distance between the sensor and the actually alarm trigger. You can actually expand it so there's more distance between the optical eye and the float switch.
Yeah, I mean the only thing I'd have to do is just get the bracket and just put the float switch a little bit higher.
No, even without the bracket.
That's so funny. That's so funny. I got the breakout box, and I bought a little float switch off of eBay, and I hooked it up to the breakout box on the Apex, and it picks up when it gets a little low, and it squirts water, and as it gets low, I mean eBay style. I'm talking $398. $4, and
Yeah,
I got my ATO.
Yeah, but just keep an eye on those because again, I'm just new to all this too. But from what I'm hearing, those mechanical switches they get filled with algae and they could get stuck or whatever. So
it's new. It's really new. It's actually really new. I mean, this tank ain't even 3 months old.
Yeah, yes. So the float switches, yeah, they are prone to failure. So you have to clean them regularly. Also, if you have a refugium and you have snails in it, like stomatella snails and other little things, you have to be, they do sell some with snail guards. You have to be mindful of them.
It's on a tank, no sump, 75 gallon.
Okay.
The Tunes osmolator
hanging over the back.
The Tunes osmolator has a optical sensor on it, a single one, that's aimed it down in the water. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but
it works well.
Yeah, it works very well.
I've been looking for a better alternative. That's just
that's one of the best. Cheap. That's one of the best is the Tunes osmolator. And then what happens is the float switch is actually positioned higher than the optical sensor. So you shouldn't really be getting dirt and algae and stuff growing to lock up and jam your overflow because it should be topping up to and stopping before it gets to that overflow.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm still running the canister filters.
What exclusive Reef was saying is that his gyres he's using very powerful gyres on his tank, and I think what he's saying is when his gyres ramp up, it pushes extra water down his overflow and extra water down his sump. And because the water level in the sump isn't is like sort of moving because the flow through his sump is so high, sometimes his Tunzi osmolator gets triggered. But what I'm telling you exclusive is that there is a way on the Tunzi osmolator to increase the distance between the float valve and the optical eye. So when you have some time tomorrow, it might not be apparent immediately, but when you have some time tomorrow, you can actually take it out and you could get up to 1 inch or 2, I think, between those two devices. So when water gets pushed down the sump, it shouldn't be triggering that float valve.
Okay, I'll take a look.
Yeah, they do. Yes, you can get an extra magnet and sort of separate them. I've also done that before, but I was having sort of similar problem that you were having, where I was pumping my ATO water into a different area of the sump. So even when the ATO shut off, it would take a few seconds to reach that chamber of the sump. So all I did was just increase, you just take it off, look at it, and maybe look I'm sure you can find a video on YouTube where it's literally something that you have to slide up and down, but you can increase the distance between them.
That's something else that I've heard about and I have not found anybody to contradict it, although maybe there's somebody out there. I have never heard of the osmolator failing in the on position. So I have personally had it get salt creep and stuff on the optical sensor and fail in the off position, but I've never had it or heard of anybody having it fail in the on position.
The only time
So you're overflowing your tank with RODI pure water and not enough salt.
Yep. The only time I've ever had my Tunzi osmolator fail is when I upgraded to a new, when I first set up my Tunes osmolator, when I first had it years ago, 5 years ago, I had a small ATO container. It was very low to the ground. At some point after I installed it, I decided I needed a larger ATO container because I didn't want to fill it every week. So what happens is my ATO container was higher than where I was emptying it. So what happened is I created a siphon. So even when the pump stopped pumping, I was still, I still had water siphoning into my sump. So that was the only time my Tunzi osmolator failed. And it wasn't really the osmolator that failed. It was me that, set something up. It doesn't matter if I was using the Tunzi or any other ATO. I still would have created a siphon that would have, so that's the only time my osmolator ever failed.
How big was that system, though?
It was, I think at the time I had a 40 breeder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't. Damn.
And another thing I love, I know this is an Apex talk, but there's one thing I really like about the Tunzi osmolator versus the new Neptune Systems ATO. The Tunzi osmolator alarm is loud. When something's wrong, there's yes, the new Neptune Systems, even when you run it in standalone mode, the alarm is not that loud. I have it in my cabinet and you can't hear it. The Tunzi, it doesn't matter what cabinet you put it. It could be in a different room or somewhere.
You hear it downstairs.
Yeah. Right?
That's like wake you up out the dead of zombie sleep.
Yes, sir. You believe me. You have one of those and it's alarming, you're going to get up and see what's wrong because it's going to annoy the heck out of you.
Yeah, it don't stop. It just keeps going.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there it is. That's it.
You got going off in the background.
Is anybody using like one of those voice activated services with Apex? Is that a possibility?
Voice activated service? You mean like
beyond my forte?
You mean like
feed my fish.
Very loud, very irritating.
Ain't gonna happen.
Reef Dudes is not here, but EcoSmart Live has a Ecotech, and their EcoSmart Live, they have a you can teach Alexa a skill that can put your tank into feed mode. And I know Reef Dudes, I don't know if he's listening, Reef Dudes, but I think
I trust my tank to Alexa.
I think Reef Dudes created a way to put his tank into feed mode where he told Alexa to put his Vectra into feed mode. And when the Vectra powered, Vectra went into feed mode where it went into a lower power state where it started pumping less water. And he did like power monitoring that told him like, hey, when the pump is drawing like 8 watts, then do these other things. So he was able to put his tank into feed mode by like a chain of events, which was kind of cool, but it's not something I would have done.
I have a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Al.
No. I think I'm finished.
Oh, can you guys show me on the Apex how to check for like the wattage and how much everything is using? Like, let's say like heaters, how many watts they're using, or the pump or stuff like that? Because I have no idea.
All right, hang on a second.
I cannot do that because the Junior does not have that function.
All right, hang on a second. Let me line this up. Let me line this up.
Like it tells me right now I'm using like 30 watts, but I think that's total. But I don't know like individually what's using what.
Oh, this is very easy. So you I have to share my screen.
They're asking in the chat about getting a link.
Oh, all right. Give me a second. Okay, all right. Let me. All right. Exclusive. Give me 1 second. Let me get them a link first, and then I will. There you go, Steve, Dave. Then let me share my. All right. All right. So, are you seeing my screen now? Exclusive.
Yeah, I see it.
All right. So simply, all you do is, to easily see what your power draw is. So if you know your heater is running now, and you want to know what your heater is pulling, just simply click right here within the bar, and it expands and will tell you, like, hey, my skimmer is pulling 12 watts. My ATK is putting 3 watts. My doser is putting 3 watts. So just click right here. Your heater, yeah.
Okay, wait. How did you get your EB8 to show? Is that an EB8 or EB32?
It's an EB832.
Okay, because I see EB8.
Yeah, I just named it EB8.
Okay. That threw me off. I'm like, how the hell did he get that working?
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Man, you're missing a volt. You got to go see an electrician.
Maybe 100. Yeah. So that's all you do to just see what something is drawing. But remember, you know what, also exclusive, you can actually, I don't remember where right now, but you can actually put in how much your electricity costs. And so, for instance, if I was supposed to, like, let's say, go in.
Oh yeah, let's not do that.
Oh yeah, yes. I did that. Yeah.
Yes. So it'll tell me, like, hey, let's see what my skimmer costs. It'll tell you what it costs over time.
Let's not go there.
Yeah. My wife, listen, when I convinced my wife that I was going to get an Apex, she was not a fan of it until she's like, oh, I'll finally see how much your tank costs to run. So that, by the way, I don't think this is accurate at all. By the way, I don't think it's accurate. I don't.
Well, it also depends, because you can only get this kind of data, I believe, on the digital ports, whereas the relay ports, I don't think you can actually get data on, if I'm not mistaken.
And when it's running, I think it calculates when the device is running. So what'll happen is, when you're looking at your heater running here, it'll tell you what your heater is going to cost to run per year. But then it's also going to assume that your heater is probably going to run all the time. So,
speaking of power, something that I have learned, and there's been other videos out there that you can go out and identify. Do not put your Apex on a interruptible power supply. It chews juice like there's no tomorrow. Whatever processor they used or however the thing works, it will drain your power supply very quickly. What you want to do is you want to take what needs to be on in a power outage position, set that as your failover or whatever it is. I forget what the exact term is, and have that set up so that that will actually run your pumps the correct way.
Wait, say that again. I missed the last part.
Basically, you want to configure it so that your Apex, the actual brain, is not going to actually be on your uninterruptible power supply. Only your EB8 is.
I see.
So what will happen is in a power supply, in a failover mode, what will happen is your Apex will actually run out of power, okay, because it's not going to be on battery backup. But when you set your programming in your power strip, it's going to upload that configuration to the power strip, and there's a mode on there called failover or fallback, or I forget what it's called, but there's a mode on there. And what that does is that sets is this port on or off in a data connection loss situation. So what will happen is if you have your EB8 on the UPS, it'll lose its connection to the Apex, and it'll go into that failover mode, and then you'll only be running things off of the battery that you absolutely want to run, and you'll lose less power.
Okay.
Hey guys, how are you?
How you doing, Rip?
Can you hear me properly?
Rip, is it? I see you're out. You're out and about today.
There's wind. Okay. Sorry. Hold on.
Oh, Dave said, Alexa, crash my tank. I'm not home, so I don't have my Alexa here, but that would be interesting if I asked Alexa that. Charles Willis corrected me and said it's 20 millimeters is the difference between I said 2 inches between the optical eye and the float valve. I think he said the maximum is 20 millimeters, but exclusive. I still think it's worth, looking into. If you guys have any question, also non-related Apex questions, don't hesitate to ask.
So Apex is showing that I had an upgrade or update pending, and I want to do an update right now, and everything is going crazy. My return pump just shut off. My skimmer that was off is now going on.
Yeah, I think is the update still installing?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so give it a second. Give it a second. My Apex Junior in my son's bedroom, it needs an update, but I've been sort of, dreading having to run like the 100-foot cable all the way across the apartment to plug in and upgrade his tank.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing is by having that failover mode, what's probably happening is because mine never has a problem. I've updated my Junior a couple times, and I don't have any weird anomalies going because I have my failover mode set the way that they should. So what happens is when the patch goes through and it updates, you probably don't have your failover set correctly. So what's happening is your power supply is losing, or your power strip is losing its data connection to the Apex and going into whatever those settings are, and that's what's turning on and off your stuff.
So exclusive. You remember when we were talking when you were programming your heater and we were setting to fallback?
Correct.
Yeah, that's basically what that is. So there's some devices that you want to set at fallback on, and fallback on is basically what Scott was saying is failover. When the device can't connect with the Apex or the Apex brain can't connect to EBH, something happens. That's the state that so for instance, my return pump, no matter what happens, I want my return pump to keep working. So I leave fallback on for that. Some devices like maybe your heater, something fails. I would rather my heater default to off rather than turning on and overheating my tank or something. So that I usually do default to fallback off. So it really depends on the device you're using and your specific application. But I think it's worth sitting down and considering. What do you want your device to do if the Apex was to ever fail? Do you want it to stay on or do you want it to shut off?
Yeah, I'm almost 99% that I have it set to fall back on and set on for the return pump.
All right. I got a question from Coon's Corals. What's up, everybody? What's up, Coon? Oh, gosh, that sounded so bad. I'm sorry. Do you guys run your Apex directly connected to your modem router? My 2016 Apex, I do not. Actually, both my Apexes, I do not. My Apex Junior, I connected to a Apple. I use an Apple time capsule as the main router for my apartment. Hey, Rip, the background noise is kind of sound like you're having a party over there. Oh, it's not. It's not.
It says muted here. Just mute me, please.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Oh, sorry. It was Howie. It was Howie. Sorry. I'm sorry. Sorry, Rip. It wasn't you. My bad. What was I saying? I lost my train.
We were talking about the routers.
Yes, Rip. It wasn't you. Yes. So my Apex, I use an Apple router. I just bought like I just use like a Apple connection, and once I set up the Apex, I gave it a static IP address and just connected it to wirelessly. I've heard people say like the Netgear gaming router is the best one to use, for the Apex. But my 2016 Apex comes with Wi-Fi. I use the Wi-Fi. Initially, it had a lot of issues with connectivity, but they released a patch and totally works fine now. I haven't dropped a connection in probably 6 or 7 months. and the Apex Junior, I use a Apple, you know, I don't know what those little Apple routers are called, the ones that you just plug into the wall. Thank you, Scott. I use a time capsule as my main router, and I use an Airport Express to connect it to the main, and I have no issues.
It shouldn't really matter. I mean, yeah,
however,
it doesn't have enough bandwidth to actually cause problems with the Wi-Fi routers. It should work with just about anything, honestly.
However, I've been warned many times that when you are updating the Apexes, the older Apexes that were not made to run wirelessly, do not do any updates over Wi-Fi. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I've never tried. I've been warned so many times.
Do not do it.
Yes, so I don't do it. So whenever I need to update my Apex, I run the cable across the apartment and update it that way. I do not take the risk. And
the reason why is because if you're in the middle of updating and there's interference on the line, it drops a packet or whatnot, or it can't recover for whatever reason, they don't have enough memory, I guess, to actually store the entire flash and then put it on there. So you're pretty much screwed if something happens in the middle of it. If you are doing the update from one of your local computers to the Apex over a physical wired connection, the chances of anything going wrong is virtually nil.
ReefBiz has a question. Just installed my Apex today. Couldn't get salinity probe calibration correct. Any ideas? So ReefBiz, I'm assuming you have the 2016 Apex. I found out that on the first day, I could not get it calibrated initially. I had to leave it in the sump for a few days. I don't know if the probe just needs breaking in, but I had to. I left it in my sump, for a few days, and then calibrated after. That's how I did it. But you said it's measuring 37 ppt. You know what? That's pretty close. 37. You know what? If it's new, I would leave it in the sump for a few more days and then try to calibrate it again.
Yeah, I'd leave it for a week.
Yeah, see if you can bump out any bubbles in it. That's what I would do. Also, I find that because the way I have a Red Sea Reefer 350, and the way the Red Sea tank is, the sump has two compartments, left and right, and they really give you like a little opening to like run all the cables through. So I found that I was getting huge interference because the salinity probe was touching all my power cables in any way. So I actually got better readings when I was able to isolate it from the other cables. So but 37 to, I think that's really close. If the Apex is new, I would just leave it in for a few more days.
The other problem with the salinity probe, or what it's also known as a quote unquote conductivity probe, which is how it works, is water is actually an excellent insulator, contrary to what people think, and does not conduct electricity hardly at all in its pure state. Which is why when you have a RODI unit and you're checking the conductivity coming off of your RO membrane, you're generally at like 1 or 2 parts per million, because it can actually get a voltage across that water, that fluid, that liquid. Whereas when it comes out of your deionizer, it's pure 100% water, which is a wonderful insulator until it gets to your bucket anyways. So the problem is you're trying to measure such fluctuations in electricity in how conductive the fluid in your tank is, that, like he's saying, if you have anything that's going to generate a magnetic field near that cable, it's going to throw it off. The worst thing you could do probably is coil the cable, because it's a pretty long cable, but if you like coil it to try and make it any shorter, you're basically making a magnetic field that's really going to mess with stuff. So you want to make it as straight as possible, and you want to try and keep it away from any other electronic cable if you can, in any way, shape, or form.
I have a question for just a bubble tip. You said that you did what O said and it didn't work. I have 2 questions. One, did you calibrate the probe, and are you using one of those probe holders? And 2, is your salinity probe just the tip is in the water, or did you submerge the whole thing? Because the reason I'm asking is because when I did mine, and mine was also new last week, I didn't know I was supposed to submerge it, And what I did was I had it in the probe holder, and I just had the tip in the water, and I was getting really bad readings. When I submerged the whole thing, then I got pretty accurate readings.
I'd have to look, but I don't think you're supposed to submerge completely any of the Neptune probes. I think that you're supposed to send the tip in, but it's not just the very tip. I think there's a port, a really small port, like up the probe that it compares the two between. So I think you have to like stick it in a decent amount, but you don't want to stick it in where the black part is up where the cable comes out. I don't think you want to have that submerged.
Yeah, that's the only cable that could be completely submerged. I mean, probe, the conductivity probe.
Interesting.
Gotcha.
I always just threw my. Listen. I now have a new sump that has like a fancy built-in probe holder, and I think this is the only time ever I've had them not completely submerged, because usually I just throw them in a corner of the sump and leave them.
All of them?
Yeah, for years that's what I did. So you learn something new every day.
Yeah, the small black probe, the one with the black cap, that's the conductivity probe, the salinity, and that's the only one that could be submerged. Everything else, you can't. You could submerge them, but you got to take them right out. You can't leave them submerged.
Yeah, they'll start to leak.
All right, see, you learn something new every day.
So I had a question.
Just the bubble tip say you can't get any readings. Listen, I've heard of a few people, especially when it first came out, having bad salinity probes. So if you bought yours new, I would just go to Neptune System Support and don't wait for anybody. You know what? Here's what you do, just the bubble tip. Here's my experience. Get 2 or 3 packets of the Get 2 or 3 packets of the conductivity calibration solution. Hey, I'm getting some weird feedback, Howie. So I don't know if that's you, but I muted you. Sorry, Howie. So get some of those salinity packets, and then contact Neptune and just tell them what you've done, because they might want to walk you through calibrating it again. They might want to log into your Apex and look at it, but they're probably going to ask you to calibrate it again. But especially, open a ticket with Neptune is what I was going to say. Especially if if it's new, if it's within warranty, they're pretty good about replacing those. I have seen some forum posts where some users had some bad probes and they replaced them. So just contact them. I like Neptune support. They have good people. I have someone I know pretty well working for them, but they're pretty. They hire. Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I like Neptune support. They usually take care of me pretty quickly. I've had a couple of things replaced under warranty. I've also had them repair some stuff not under warranty, and I really do like Neptune support.
I don't think you can update through USB flash drive. One of the guys in chat was asking Roscoe. I think it needs to be Ethernet, and what happens is when I update mine, you actually find out what the IP address is of the Apex, in case you just set it up for DHCP, so it can change IPs if you don't give it a static one. I found that one to work for the best rather than giving it a static IP. And what you do is you just look it up on the controller, find out what it is, go into that module, and it will directly connect over your internal network to do the update.
Mm-hmm.
So just the bubble tick removed the cap on the probe. And I think that's the problem. You're not supposed to.
Wait, which probe is it? The salinity?
Yeah.
Are you not supposed to remove the black cap?
Not on the salinity one. On all the ones, yeah.
Oh man, listen, man.
Scott, can you confirm that?
It's interesting.
I'm honestly not sure. That's not one of the modules that I use.
I think the salinity probe comes in. You know what? I don't think it has a cap you can remove. I think it comes with a protective casing. But yes, I think you have to remove the cap on this one. Actually, I don't know if it comes with a cap on it, because the thing about the salinity probe is it's like the thing is a little recessed to protect it, and then there's a hole in the side which allow air bubble to escape, because air bubbles really screw with the conductivity readings. You know what? I don't know. I don't think it comes with a cap.
You know what? You're right. No. The one I was thinking about was the temperature one. The temp is the one that I submerged. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that one's fine. And you do not want to remove the cap on the temperature one.
Yeah, the temperature one. Yeah. Sorry about that. I was confusing the probes.
Yeah, and you know what? Also, when I got my Apex, the temperature was a few degrees off, so you do want to sort of calibrate your temperature when you first get it. Your temperature, don't just trust it automatically out of the box. I think what I've seen BRS said, and I think it's worth doing, is if you can't get your hand on a really good thermometer, then what you can do is just buy a couple of cheap thermometers and get an average, of all three, and then use that as sort of your baseline for your tank. But I found that they can be a few degrees off out of the box. Guys, I'll be right. I have some cold coffee here that I need to microwave, so just give me a second. Let me reheat it, and I'll be back in a few minutes. So Scott and Exclusive, you guys have the con.
Oh man, the broadcast just went to hell.
Am I feeding back?
You've got like a buzzing noise in the background.
All right, I will work on that.
Cap, sorry, just one. Yeah, it's temperature probe. Yeah, temperature probe. Yeah, my temperature probe was actually spot on, like completely. And I actually ended up using the what was it called? The Neotherm ones, the heaters that explode. But they tend to have like some of the best temperature control of any thermometers or heaters that I've used in any tanks. They're just literally spot on within like 0.1 of a degree. That it never changes. That they're just awesome until they explode. That kind of sucks, I hear. Any other questions? Actually, let's see. I don't know if people want to go into programming or whatnot. That might be
What you got?
Topic for another time.
What you got, bro? Oh,
I don't have anything complicated. I was just seeing if people wanted to like do anything on programming or not.
Reef says his temperature was spot on. Yeah, it's 11:21. If you have any general aquarium questions or so, you can go ahead. It's late at night. The kids have all gone to bed. Now let me ask you guys now. So I love my Apex. I bought a GHL doser, and I like the doser. The one thing I do not like about the GHL is the software. Neptune Systems is miles ahead in terms of software. After dealing with the Neptune, my wife, I wouldn't say my wife is like tech savvy, but she knows her way to figure out stuff. My wife could probably buy a new Apex and configure it out the box to sort of put it in her tank, calibrate it, because the software is really user friendly. Man, the GHL software, I mean, I'm only using the dosing pump, but if their controller is anything like this, then it's, man, first of all, I don't use Windows.
Well, I went over the dosing thing right at the beginning of this, how you actually set up the dose and not how you set it up, but how you program it and do your intervals and stuff like that.
Oh, you answering a question from the chat, or?
No, right way back when we started, and I brought up the UI and the interface.
Yeah, but
I was talking about the GHL. The GHL interface is really what you explained is so easy. The GHL interface is at first, like I said, I use Mac at home. I had to go install Windows to go like install a Windows software to be able to configure it, and it just went downhill from there.
Oh, well, you were upgrading there.
So what's the deal with this Trident thing?
Oh man.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Oh man.
I'm gonna have to chat, y'all. I'll see you in the chat room.
All right, Howie. We have a question. Oh, hang on. Let me just take this question from Charles. Oh,
Is there still noise?
yeah. We hear like someone playing a vuvuzela in the background.
Vuvuzela? I haven't heard that in ages. Okay, let me fix it. Hold on.
All right. Oh, do you have your gyres hooked up to the VDM? Yes, I do. I got a guy to sell me 2 gyre interface modules, which would be $125 a piece. I got them for $60 from a guy. So yes, I have the gyres hooked up to my Apex, just like the bulk resupply video. And
now, how does that work? Do you get to pick the modes or anything like that?
you basically do whatever you want to do, just as how you know what BRS a few weeks ago kind of said, you know, they changed the flow pattern, and you know, where I think the mode changes 45 minutes throughout the day, where you push, he creates like a surge, and then, you know, he creates shifting points of like turbulence, and it's really cool. But guess what? CJ, and if you watch a video by CJ Aquariums actually created like a very similar flow pattern on the gyre controller itself. Like, it literally took me an hour on the gyre controller to sort of program in CJ's, you know, and like I said, because there's only 24 set points on the gyre, his, instead of changing every 45 minutes, it changes once an hour. But CJ's programming gets you, I would say, 90% of the way there for $290 less. So I would definitely, if you saw that BRS video and you're interested in trying it, then check out CJ's video. CJ's video is a good starting point for how to program your gyre controllers to sort of mimic that BRS flow.
Have you ever seen how the MP10s are programmed on the WXM with the Apex?
I'm assuming, yeah, I've seen them how they're programmed. Yep.
Okay. How you can change all the modes and have them anti-sync each other and switch back and forth and all that fun stuff.
No, this is not that intuitive, because you have to create. No, it's not as intuitive as that, because.
Okay, I was gonna say, because that is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's not as intuitive as that. Yes, Charles Willis, you will need the advanced controllers. Oh, you don't need to do it. Yeah, just watch CJ's video. I think what CJ does, CJ likes to do a pulse. You know, so with the BRS shifting back and forth, he does a pulse. I just didn't do a pulse. I just kept, you know, like straight flow. But yeah, I say try, if you're gonna have 2 gyres and you have an advanced controller, I say try CJ's flow pattern first and see if it's gonna get you the way there. And if it doesn't, then you can go ahead and buy the gyre interface controllers if you want to. But Scott, yeah, it's a programming. If you want to program pumps with the Apex, it's not as intuitive as the WXM model. Like, you sort of have to create your own set points. You have to drag. You can either drag them, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's as intuitive as you know. It can be as simple or as hard as you want to. But let's say I wanted to create 24 different flow patterns, 24 times the. Let's say I had a Tunzi pump, and I wanted to create 24 different flow patterns and have it change flow pattern throughout the day, like pulsing ones, this ones. It's going to be a lot easier with the WXM, because then you'll probably have to do virtual outlets. The WXM controlling MP10 is a lot easier. Let's just say that. A lot easier. A lot easier.
Okay.
No one's complaining, so I guess my mic isn't that bad right now, right?
No.
Still noticeable, but you're good for now. You're good. You're good, Rip. You're good.
Just let me know. Just let me know, because Not my headphones are recharging, so I'm using another headphones and this. Anyway, you know what I mean.
All right.
See, I was drooling over the pentarays earlier today. Ooh. I don't know. I look at the gyres, and then it's like I look at those pentarays, and it's like,
What's a pentaray?
Pentarays are like the ones that Jason Fox uses. I think Sanjay uses these pumps. They're European pumps that are just kind of like freaky good.
Oh, it's not a pent. Oh, it's spelled different. It's a penta, RHEI.
Yes. The Hydro Wizards.
Oh, Unicore. Oh, 20 grand. Oh yeah. No, 2 grand. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the 64.
20 grand.
Oh yeah.
They were. I was watching a video earlier today where they took the pump and they turned it on, and they got it to the point where it was screeching like there was grinding metal, because it was spinning so fast and pumping so much water that it was causing cavitation bubbles.
Charles Willis, we run 240 volt here. Wouldn't that prevent us from using one from the US?
I don't honestly know.
I don't know. Also,
you will have problems with that, because depending on where you are in the world, if you're in Europe, did he say it was in Europe?
I think he said Australia, but I think they still run 240 volts there.
Okay, but the problem is I don't know what plug types they use. Like the European standards have, which ones do they use there?
Well, there's 3 standards. There's the two. It's like 2 round poles. I don't know.
Right.
I need a picture to show you, but it's 2 round poles, and the Japanese use similar plugs to ours, but they're using a different frequency. They use 50 hertz, so you need another kind of power supply to
well, a lot of power supplies are universal across the world. They can adapt anywhere from 50 to 60 hertz, and they can adapt 110 to 220 volts. But the thing is you still need to have the European plugs or whatever they use. If it's 2 straight plugs and it's a circular port, like if you look at the wall and it's a hole in the wall, like a round hole with 2 little plugs that go in there, then that's the European standard.
That's it.
Yeah, those you will not fit the American ports on there. You'll probably have to get a American, or not an adapter. You'll probably have to get a European version of the Apex if they make one. I don't honestly know, because those ports are so big compared to the American standards. Even if you were to put an adapter on there, it would not fit.
They do. I don't think so. For instance, yeah, they do make an Apex for Europe, but I don't think they get the same. For instance, even if you buy the new 2016 Apex, it's not gonna come with the EB832. It's gonna come with, like the older EB8.
Oh no, but the way, like, we also have regular plugs here. Like, for example, I took my laptops from Canada and I took them here. Obviously, I'm on the internet, so I'm using it. We have plug adapters, and the power supplies, like if it's rated, most power supplies will be rated like for worldwide, and will accept 220. So just look on the power supply, and all you need is an adapter to go from our standard, 2-pin, 1 ground prong plug to whatever. And they also sell like even if it wouldn't work. Like, let's say the power supply doesn't say, it says 120, input is 120, 60 hertz. So you can get like a power supply that will convert. You can buy it.
Yeah, you can. Generally, you don't need to, though. Generally, like any computer laptop. I mean, come on. If my shaver worked in Europe, I'm sure that most electronic devices will work.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just a matter of getting the adapter to fit the plug. Like, and they do sell some.
Oh yeah, the one I have is awesome. It's actually sold by a company called Toomey. It's quite expensive. I would not recommend it unless you travel internationally a hell of a lot. Like
No, the
tried to.
adapter's $1, but like
No, this one's $75, but it will take any plug in the world and adapt it to any plug in the world.
Oh, so it's like the Swiss Army knife.
It's literally a Swiss Army knife. So, say a European comes here, they hit the little switch that puts out the American prongs, they stick it into here, and they pull out the center adapter, and they have a European style plug port that they can plug all their European ports into. Say you go over to Europe, you pull out the center section, and then the adapter that has all the universal plugs for everywhere else in the world is actually a part of the European style. So you plug that into their wall ports, and you can plug any port from anywhere else in the world into it. It's a two-piece unit that works together. The thing is amazing. But like I say, it's $75. So unless you travel overseas a lot, not really worth it.
Hey, I have a question here. Danos Reef is asking, the Europeans doesn't have the breakout boxes, do they? Which I don't know. But it's also let me, to be honest, we're on live streams with some of our friends from the UK.
They probably know.
But not a lot of them use Apexes. Like, why do you think that? I know Michael, we know why Michael doesn't use an Apex for a certain reason we don't want to discuss. But, I know there's a lot more American reefers on these live streams, but I've yet to find one of our UK friends who are regularly on our live streams. I've yet to find one of them who use an Apex. I wonder why that is. Is it just cost, or something else? Or I'd be interested. You know what? The next time I see them, I'm gonna ask. Paul's on vacation this week, but the next time I encounter, I don't know if Fin Time's here or Psychedelic Babe or Haley or anyone is listening, but I'd like to know why they don't use just controllers. Period.
Well, it'd be interesting to find out if they don't use controllers, period, or if they use a different brand of them.
I've never actually heard them talk about it in controllers, but you know what? That's actually a good follow-up question.
My cousin in Europe had I think was about a 220, and I asked him if he had a controller or anything. He said no, and basically it came down to money. That's about it, basically.
Okay. Hey, John Gale says I don't have an Apex because it's $800. Is John Gale? Are you in the U.S. or overseas? Hey, it's $800 here too.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that new one, it's almost like, is it really worth that extra $250 to get just to not? I don't know. I'd almost go for a classic.
Yeah, it's $800 here too, to be honest. So, but if it's $800, like if you're in, he says he's in the U.S., $1,500. Jesus Christ, and then another thing too is, I bought a new Apex. I sold my old Apex, and bought a new Apex, and I paid $800, and I got all these new features. Imagine if you had to pay just as much as I paid, but you're not getting a lot of the new features. Like, I'd be pissed because, like I said, the new EBA 30, if you buy a new 2016 Apex in Europe now, you're not getting the EBA 32. You're getting the old EB8, which doesn't have power monitoring and some of these other features. So why would I buy a new Apex? And Terrence also came on and said, hey, we're not going to do it because it takes a lot of time, money, and energy to engineer, and they're not going to get the sales to support it. So I guess it's a catch-22, but
yeah.
Dossie Dan says everything is expensive here, even corals from our own back door, which is true. Rookie Reefer is on here all the time. Rookie Reefer was on here all the time, and sometimes the prices that he pays for stuff, it's funny. We'll get stuff here in the U.S. cheaper than what you guys pay, and it's in your backyard. They'll buy coral. They'll collect stuff in in Australia or some other place in Southeast Asia, ship it halfway across the globe to us here in the US, and we get it cheaper than if you guys were supposed to buy it locally.
All right. So when can we expect this Trident to come out?
I think he said Q3, Q4 this year. I don't think they're even in testing yet. As you know, Neptune has a program where they get like their stuff into the hands of users for them to test it, or report back to them before it goes live. I don't even think it's in that phase yet. So don't expect it until the end of this year, man. If it's anything like the core pump, the core, Reefapalooza last year, and even before then, I've been seeing things about the core pump, and granted, Terrence said something wasn't working properly, and they went back to engineering. But I've been hearing about the Neptune Systems pump for a while now, and so let's say they hit a snag, it might not come out this year, and it might be for the best. It might be something that they need to go back and correct.
Okay, and since this is an Apex thing. So advantages, plus and minuses of a core versus a Vectra. Since they're mutually exclusive and not interoperable with each other.
Listen, I have a core. I've been running it for about a week, and I took a Vectra off. Wow.
All right, let's hear it.
You're kind of putting me on the spot here, man. Wow. Ooh.
Will the core stay?
The core will stay because it interacts with the Apex. Yes.
Okay. Other than interacting with the Apex, because each one has its own mutual controller, the core can interact with the Apex, the Vectra can interact with the ReefLink. What do you think is the better hardware?
I've only been Oh man. Woo, man, Scott! I thought we were friends, man.
Hey, all's fair in love and live streams.
Ooh. Oh man, listen, man. If you ask me right now, if I had to put, if love or death, oh boy, if you had to ask me right now, which one overall would if I had to choose one for my tank overall, which one would I choose? All things being equal, I would choose the Vectra, not because I know it's silent. Using it for 2 years, it absolutely, whether I'm annoyed that it doesn't interact with the Apex, also Ecotech support is top notch. I think out of all the aquarium companies, I would put Tunzi and Ecotech as like a tier above everybody else. I cannot tell you how many times in the last 2 years that I've had stuff break, Ecotech stuff, out of warranty, and they've actually fixed it for me for free. Like listen, if I break a Ecotech product tomorrow and I send it into them and they give me crap and actually charge me, I can't be mad. Because in the last year only, they fixed two Radions, 2 Vectras, and an MP10 and MP40, all out of warranty, all for free. I created a ticket, shipped it to them, expecting to get a bill and an estimate of how much it's going to cost to fix. Next thing I know is I get a tracking number that my pump or my lights are on the way back to me, fully repaired, fully fixed, fully working. So if you had to ask me right now, like, I'm not saying Neptune Systems ever like did me wrong in terms of support, but if you ask me if one puts it over listen, what's a name even gave me, they told me when my Vectra, they said, hey, we saw you've had a couple of Vectra fail. They even sent me an extra power supply. So I'm telling you, if you ask me right now to put my head on the block and choose one, I would absolutely choose Ecotech because of the support. I know that if something happens, they're going to take care of me. They stand by their products. That's my answer right now, but I reserve the right to change.
Oh, of course. Now, here's the other thing is which pump did you have the Vectra before?
Yes.
Yes, there's 3 different models. Which one did you have?
Vectra M1.
The M1, okay. And now, do you know anything about the S1? Because I have heard that they have some design flaw or something that's causing a problem with the barb fittings or something like that.
Well, that's why I stayed away from that one. That's why I stayed away from that one because yeah.
Now is that only their S1 and the other two don't have that issue, or what's the deal with that?
I think it's the way the coupling kind of attaches to, the Vectra M1. I've never had a problem with the coupling. I've used it with PVC. I've never had an issue with the coupling slipping off. So I think there's kind of bad design with the Vectra S1 with the coupling. And I saw the bad reviews on BRS, and that's why I didn't go with it, because I didn't trust the coupling. Like, the reviews are just bad. So maybe they fixed it, maybe something, but I assume it's going to be it's just like the Vectra, except just lower powered. It's just smaller, but I just saw the bad reviews, and it's not something I could ignore. So that's why I didn't go with that.
Why doesn't the Vectra work with the Apex? It doesn't have an XWM module for it?
Listen, man, everybody who you ask, you get a different answer. But Neptune System says, we have the code ready. We can connect to it. We just need them to tell us, okay, it's okay to do it. And then Ecotech blames it on Thing, and I'm the consumer in the middle getting screwed.
So let's say you took an XWM module and you tried to hook it up to your Vectra.
Won't work. Won't work. By the way, I'm assuming it's the same freaking programming, because like, you can use. By the way, if the Ecotech MP10, it connects to a WXM, and they connect to each other. You can connect. If you can connect you can connect like your Vectra to like your pump. So let's say you don't have a controller, but you want to put your tank into feed mode with like by pressing one feed mode button on your pump, and also have it on one of your power heads, and have your pump goes into feed mode too. You can absolutely do that. So I think the code is, listen, I don't know, Rip. I don't know why, but all I know is that whoever fault it is, I'm the consumer in the middle. And
so it's politics. It's politics.
Yes. Someone got pissed because maybe Neptune is doing pumps, and like, listen, I've heard like some of the backstories and the gossip, but I really don't care.
So it works. It's just that they don't want to make it. They don't want to make it easy for consumers.
It doesn't work.
It does not work.
But
but what I'm saying is that
it should work.
It should work. Okay, but it doesn't work right now because of whatever silly reason. Like.
Yep. It's been 2 years and it's not working, so I'm assuming it's never going to work.
That's a problem, because I don't know why they do that, because that's I mean, when I say I don't know why they do that, I do know why, but I'm just like, it's just frustrating when they do that for the consumer, because we just want to plug our stuff in and have it work, So when you plan a buy for someone who's like planning to buy something, it just limits your choices.
Yep. I'm telling you. Yep. I was pissed because I got one of the first ones, and I was pissed that because I kept reading in forums that it's going to work. Listen, look what happened with the Radeon. The Radeon G4 has 2 extra channels, right? 2 extra channels that the
G4, that's 8 channels, yeah.
That the G3 didn't have. So when the G4 came out, when you connected it to your WXM model, it didn't recognize those 2 channels. You couldn't control them. Within weeks, a patch was released that made it able to kind of control those 2 channels. Why couldn't we do the same thing with the Vectra? Anyway,
if I had a lot of money, I'd do a teardown of the core and the Vectra and see why the core is functional, and what would the mods need to be done to the
I think it's software
Vectra.
Based.
I think it's soft. I think the company's just decide. I think in order to connect to it, you sort of need like. Listen, man, I don't know, Rip. Listen, the problem.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know. I'm pretty sure we can do it and we can figure it out. But the problem is, we're the consumers, and we are getting.
Well, here's the interesting deal with this. Okay, so I'd like to keep all my stuff generally brand specific, like all my lights Reef Bright or as close to it as possible. And I really, really, really like the MP10s that I have. But while I don't use the Radions anymore, I mean, if I went back to LEDs, it would either be those or it would be the Orphink lights. But just this whole issue kind of basically puts it down to, for me, if there's no hardware technical differences, I mean, I'm just pulling up BRS's website here, and the S1 is 1,400 gallons per hour at $275, and the M1 is 2,000 gallons per hour at $350. Okay, so now you flip that over, and you're looking at $275 for 15 gallons per hour, or 2,000 gallons per hour at $325. So features be the same. If they're both decent quality pumps, it would almost say, okay, if they're not going to be controllable by my Apex, it almost seems to me to be worth it to get the core.
Almost, yep.
200,
but if you already have
$275.
if you already have Ecotech stuff and you're gonna already have like a Reef Link, then maybe it's worth getting the
right.
Vectrin
But that's the whole thing is I want it to be integrated with my feed
Apex
cycle and everything else like that. Yeah, and it's like, okay, so then do I give up my MP10s and go with a gyre? I mean, that's there's a lot of reasons to switch completely over to an Apex system if this isn't going to work.
But
unless you're running Radions.
But then what the scenario you just described, it's I think it's worth to stay, because once you hit feed mode, for instance, once you hit feed mode with like your Vortec, you can also set it to trigger the Vectra in
the
feed
Vectra
mode.
exactly.
Yeah, so
it's almost like you're going to start leaning more towards, are you an Ecotech centered system or are you a Neptune?
Well, Neptune has pumps. Neptune also has wave pumps.
They have wave pumps. They integrate with halides. They integrate with a bunch of other things. Because in theory, I can take my the VDM port and hook it up to my ballast for my halides and dim my halides. I can do that with the Neptune. I cannot do that with the Reef Link.
Yep.
It's almost like it's almost like Apple versus PC. If you're going to buy into the Ecotech system to have everything be Ecotech, well, then that's fine. But that's only going to handle your lights if you use their lights, their MP10, their MP series pumps, and their return pump, and then you're locked into Ecotech for that. Whereas if you were to go with the Neptune system, you have a lot more options. You have gyres, you have pentarays, you have C-chays, you have all sorts of other things that can be controlled and manipulated by the Neptune, as well as lights. Okay, well, there's lots of other LEDs that are controllable by the Apex. The Kessels are controllable by that and everything else, versus the Ecotech system. So it's almost like Ecotech with this little spat. I don't know who's in charge of it, but it's almost like they're becoming PC versus Apple again.
I have a question. Does anybody set up the Apex to receive like an email every hour on the hour or anything like that?
Why do you want to do that exclusive?
Well, remember, I remember listening to
I
think
saw
it was
that video
Sanjay.
too.
Yeah, you saw that, right?
Yeah, every day it sends him an email that says, "Yep, I'm working. Everything's okay."
Yeah, exactly. Just so you know, because in the beginning you're like, yeah, you're always on the interface and you're looking at all your Apex stuff, but as time goes on, life takes over and you're not on that Apex. You rely basically on just your email notifications.
I think that got fixed though with the recent thing, because what we were talking about way at the beginning with the heartbeat, whereas if his situation was it lost its data connection, and then it basically said that something was going wrong, but it couldn't because his internet was out or something like that. Whereas now, like if you turn on the alerts and the Apex Fusion online can't connect to your Apex unit, it'll start sending you messages.
Yeah, it'll send you alert and say, "Hey, we tried 3 times. in the
Oh,
last
okay.
15 minutes and couldn't connect to your Apex. So something's wrong. Maybe you should check your connection.
Gotcha.
Right. So
Yeah.
you'll know that it can't detect things. So
But
Okay.
wait a second. Wait a second. You guys lost me. How does it do that? How does the Apex send you a message when it can't be connected to the internet?
because what's happening is the fusion is their website that you control things through is pinging from the outside, and then when it can't connect to your Apex
I got it.
inside, yeah,
I know what Fuge is. Yeah, I
Yep.
got it.
Yep. Well, yeah. Yep. That's exact. So I think that's useful because, yep.
I mean, I don't know that. So hardware wise, it seems that the core is better, although you say it's not as silent as the M1 or S1.
You know what? I would say if you ask me right now which one is more silent, I would say the. Oh man, I would say the Neptune system pump is slightly more silent. There's less
Really?
humming when I run it. Yes.
Really? Because a minute ago, I thought you said that the Vectra was more silent.
Did I? No,
Yeah.
I think the listen,
Maybe I
man.
heard
Listen,
you wrong.
Yeah, you did.
Alzheimer's.
listen, man. Like I said, you're asking me to like give like really minor like
Okay, so we'll call them equal on sound.
but I'll tell you,
Okay.
like I said,
So we're looking equal on price. We're looking equal on sound. We're looking at 100 gallons per hour extra, which who cares? But
no, it's
we're
the
looking.
same. It's the same. 2000 versus 2000.
No. I'm looking at the lower end one. I'm looking at the S1 versus
Oh,
the
the S1. Oh,
yeah, the
wait.
entry level one.
Oh, okay, that's different then. Okay. Let me restate. So if you're asking me for the Vectra, the entry level Vectra versus the entry level
Core.
the core, you need an Apex to run it. So let's say, you decide. That's also why I didn't buy the entry level core, because let's say something happens. Me, I'm always changing crap. So let's say I decided to like sell it or use it in a different application. With the core, with the smaller core, you need an Apex to run it.
Ooh, okay. So that makes it suck a little bit more because if you need to have a core. Now, are you sure about this? Because it's showing a controller here.
I am at the core 17 or on the core 20.
The core 15.
The core 15, you need an Apex. It comes. Remember earlier, someone asked that question.
Right here. It says core 15 requires an Apex controller. Okay, so that means that that kind of sucks for somebody with a junior, because this is going to take up one of your module slots.
Actually, you can't. No, that sucks even more than what you're thinking, because it requires one of those new proprietary ports that's on the side of the Apex. It requires, I think it's called a DC24 or a one-link port. It requires.
That really blows. Okay, so this thing is a piece of crap. So then, okay, for $275, so basically you have a design decision. You need to have the $800 Apex to work with the 15, or you need to have the $270 S1, which basically has a design flaw that could turn your sump into a fountain. Okay, awesome.
Hey, if you look at the, oh man, all right.
Okay, so let's go up one level and let's pay extra for proper design. Okay, so we're looking at the M1, which is 2,000 gallons per hour for $350, versus the Core 20, which is $325, which is the same 2,000 gallons per hour.
And I told you, right now, to me, they're neck and neck, except I would absolutely choose the Vectra based on Ecotech support. Right now, they're so neck and neck that the difference for me would be Ecotech support.
Okay.
They're so neck and neck. Yep.
Interesting.
Hey, what's up, Woody? Woody is listening. We have the breakout box in the UK. Hey, Woody, why don't you guys use controllers more? I mean, you find a lot of us America. I know we outnumber you guys a lot, but why don't more UK reefers use controllers? I'd be interested to know. Yes. So while we wait for Woody to answer. So yes, so you can see now, Scott, why I decided to go with the Core 20 because I didn't want to be tied to an Apex. Who knows? Maybe GHL will come out with a controller and I'll be in love and I decide to switch. So
yeah, but the thing is actually the more and more I look at this, I don't know, man. This is almost saying, get rid of the WXM module, save an extra module on the Apex Junior, and just let these slave these all together. So your quiet drive is going to sit there and run at whatever speed you put it at, and then you're going to have your master and slaved the MP10 drives just basically acting as their own little network together to control themselves. Once you get them programmed in, unless you want them to do a lot of fancy stuff, but most people are just dialing them into waves. So then you walk up, you hit feed mode on the one of them, and they all turn off.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hey, Seymour, Charles wants to know on a 5-foot tank, should it go with the gyros 230 or 250?
Man, what does CJ say? 250?
You know CJ, he wants to blow freaking water out of his tank.
Oh, man, listen, I would go with the 250s and to run them lower.
Yeah.
Nah, I will go 230s.
But the problem with the 230s is you're going to be running them at a higher percentage, which means you're going to be getting that
Yes.
Whereas if you run with the 250s, you only have to run up to 50% and you won't have any noise.
I am exclusive. I am running 230s now, and I have to ramp them up to about 80 at a time. And yes, you do hear the whir. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I could run mine at 100% on the tank, the 230s. I could run them at 100%, and it won't really, like, of course, corals will be pissed off, but it won't blow anything. I think from what you're telling me, like if you run yours at 100%, it'll shoot water. It'll push the water out of the tank.
I'm hitting ceiling if I do that.
Yeah. So I would say go the bigger pump and turn them down. It'll give you more flexibility in case you upgrade later or something.
Now I'm going to be doing a peninsula on my new tank, and I was actually thinking about running them sideways in the tank.
Reef Dudes has a nice peninsula, and that's one of the things he's always considering, like, how do I do flow properly?
Yeah, so basically it would be pulling from the short end of the tank and then trying to send it along basically the edge of the glass. And then it would literally like wrap around the outer edge of the tank, and then when the other one switched on, it would literally do it back and forth. So the entire tank would be getting like a back and forth kind of flow, but the center of where the flow would be on, instead of being at the top of the tank, it would be around the edges of the tank. So the corals would kind of get the gyre rolling in from the outside. I don't know. It'd be interesting.
Woody's Reef is saying, I use the Apex. Oh, Woody, I didn't know you. Oh, well, Woody's related to the Queen. So Woody, I use the Apex, and a lot of my friends do. I didn't know that. Interesting, Woody. But I do know Paul and Michael are not keen, but they are very popular in the UK. But we don't get the new 2016 plug bar, and he has an angry face. All right, Woody. All right, Woody. I didn't know you had a controller, but what did I expect? He's I think he's like the cousin to the Queen or something. He's like 4th or 5th in line for the throne, so it's no wonder he has an Apex.
Nice.
Yeah. No wonder he has an Apex. We're not surprised he has an Apex.
Yeah, but it's very interesting how these play out, and it's like, do you want to dive into the ecotech system, or do you want to dive into the... They've now added company value and support value to their products, since they're no longer interoperable.
Everyone now is trying to, like the current USA has the loop system, so everyone is trying to create their own, system to sort of, I wouldn't say lock you. Ooh, Woody, super chat. Thank you, Woody. I wouldn't say they are. Ooh, Woody distracted me with that super chat. Thank you, Woody. I wouldn't say they're trying to. Yeah, every company's trying to lock you in now. Like, Max Spec is having. Yeah, a lot of companies have their their own sort of controllers. The loop system, the ICV6, yeah. Even Vertex was supposed to come out with the Cerebra. That failed miserably. Like that rollout failed miserably. Tunzi's coming out with a multi-controller now that helps you. So listen. You know what? A lot of times, a lot of this fracturing the market or trying to create pockets, all the people who get hurt are the consumers, because who knows, maybe the company decides they don't want to be in that anymore. Who gets left with equipment that doesn't interoperate with anyone else?
Right. That's why I'm definitely semi-anti this Core 15. Besides, you got to have a freaking $800 Apex.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Apex.
No, you don't necessarily have to. Sorry to cut you off, but you would have to, if you have the Apex Junior, like what's your name had, then you had to get a one-link module. Let me see how much a one-link module is. Then you'd have to get a one-link module, which is $150. So you'd have to get a one-link module, which is $150, and then you'd be able to.
So that's $325, $425. So basically, I'm spending $425 to get a Core 15 on the Junior.
Yep.
Or I could just go out and get an S1.
Yeah.
Or buy the Core 20 for $350. Oh, but do I still need that module for the Core 350?
No, you don't. That's what I use, and I can use it standalone, or I can connect it to the Apex if I want to.
But if you did want to connect it to the Apex,
you could. You just use an
that module.
No, you don't. You just use an Aquabus cable.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's what. Why do you think I got? Listen, I'm trying to explain to you. That's why I got it, because I'm able to, if for whatever reason I decide to sell it or use it in a different application, it's flexible. I prefer to pay a little bit more money up front and have flexibility.
Yeah, but that seems just like the Neptune guys are just trying to jack you around deliberately.
I'm not going to say that on this stream.
Yeah, I know you won't, but I will. I mean, I'm just doing a cost benefits analysis here, and it's just, I don't know.
CJ said, I'm upgrading to 250s. You got shotgun? Nah, CJ, remember, I keep another. Oh, man. No, CJ, I'm actually gonna decline that one, only because I already have three. I already have three gyres because I rotate. Like when one needs cleaning, I put the So I actually don't need anyone.
When are they coming out with the gyre return pump?
Gyre return pump? Oh boy. Man, listen, man. I feel like you're trying to troll me or try to.
Now think about that though. That would be awesome. Like okay, so you basically have your pumps like your gyre, right? And now this is just going out in wacky left field, but you know how you have the gyre? It's the laminar flow across the top of the tank or around the edge, however you do it. But if you actually had like a return pump, like the core or whatnot, but going into a spinning mechanism like that, so say you had like a turbine blade in there that just from water's flow would spin the blades inside, and then the water pressure would exit out into those spinning blades, you could literally have like a flat return pump. So it would get pumped up, but the actual like out mechanism would be a gyre.
Oh boy. Hey, have you seen the MaxSpec Duo, which is the one that has two outputs? Like you can it's called the MaxSpec Turbine Duo, where it has two outputs. So let's say 27, you have some that are 2,500 gallons an hour. So you can use one to be your return pump and one to run a manifold. It's one pump but has two release heads.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that a while ago.
Where is this?
It's called a MaxSpec Gyre Turbine, MaxSpec Duo.
I think they featured that on one of the BRS videos long time ago.
And this is only $300. 2,500 gallons per hour. This thing is literally almost like what I was talking about, but not in the tank. It has a motor that spins in the center, and each side of it has a return pump. That This is cool. This is very cool. In stock, 92 of them. That's not so cool. That means people probably aren't buying it.
Wait, how many are in stock?
92
From where? From BRS?
from BRS, yeah.
You know what?
There are no reviews.
I do not have these pumps, so I will decline advertising. I would decline comment on these pumps.
Yeah, it's hard because I mean it looks cool, but it could be a looking cool piece of junk. We don't know. Interesting.
Interesting indeed. CJ said you can create a self-cleaning sump with that pump.
Yeah.
You probably can, and you won't need to put all these valves to self-clean.
Oh, that's interesting. It's modular.
You can add.
You can rotate each side independently.
Oh, there's also, if you wanted to combine both, they also sell a separate connector that you can use to combine both different flow areas into one.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at the parts thing now. That's pretty cool.
His favorite company, Max Spec. So.
I don't know. I gotta think more on the Ecotech versus Neptune because I like both of the companies, so it's kind of hard. But their cheap ones both have significant negative drawbacks.
I think that will be just speculating, but nobody's really asking a lot of questions right now, so just speculating. But I think that's not a Vortec and core issue. How it connects to the Apex. I don't think that's really a big deal. Eventually, somebody's going to come up with a hack. I think that's just a guess, but.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, when you actually get to the middle level, the M1 and the Core 20, you're getting pretty close in terms of performance versus price. It literally is coming down to which ecosystem do you want to go into.
Oh, Woody is saying we should just go for the Red Dragon pump. Oh, yeah.
The Red Dragon pump?
Oh, you've never heard of that? Oh, Scott,
No.
do you have money to burn? Do you have money to just light on fire?
No.
Okay.
Where is this?
I think that is the mother load.
Is that the Abyss?
This is more power. I think this is more expensive than this.
Exclusive.
I'm out of here. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you later.
I'm exhausted. Good night.
These pumps, I think, have more. They're like the Royal exclusive pumps. I think these pumps are more reliable than.
Dude, I'm just looking for like a 55-gallon, man. I don't know. I'm looking at this Abyss pump. It's $1,300.
Hey man, the Red
This thing's
Dragon.
as much as the tank.
Hey man, there's the Red Dragon pump that pumps 1,300 gallons per hour. That's like, $750 US.
Wow. Yeah, my card's telling me to plug it in.
Plug it in.
Yeah, I have a card that complains at me, let alone a tank controller.
Yeah, you'll never get here. No.
I don't know. These C-Chays are pretty nice, though. Synchro Advanced 7.0 water pump, 1,900 gallons per hour for $203, DC controllable. I don't know. I've always liked C-Chay. Now the question is whether or not these are Apex controllable.
I don't think. You know which one is Apex controllable? The Varios pumps. Let's just be honest. The Reef Octopus pumps.
Oh.
They're controllable, and all you need to control it through the Apex is to buy a $17 cable.
Ooh. Interesting. Oh well, my brain's getting fried.
Yep, mine too.
It's getting late.
All right, guys. If you guys want to stay on and chat, I'd be happy to leave it up. But I am in Syracuse, New York, and I am going to be traveling back to Brooklyn, New York tomorrow. So I really do need, I was up with you guys like last night, like hooping it up, but I really do have to go.
I fell
No,
asleep
man.
during that. It was
No,
hysterical.
man, I just popped in. I just popped in for a little while here. I have errands to do today too, so I can't stay on too long. I just came in to say hi, see what's up.
All right. So thank you guys for joining. Thank you everybody in the chat. CJ, Reef Keeper for modding. Dave, if you're still listening, thank you, Woody. Thank you everyone, Reef Keeper, Steve, Dave. I saw you guys modding. Thank you for doing a good job. It was a little bit distracting, but I appreciate what you guys did. I'm gonna try and do this every Thursday. Where we not only talk Apex, but we just talk aquarium tech. We all have a tech fix because a lot of us are in technology. So I'll email you guys, see if we can come up with a topic. Maybe we'll talk about products that are on the horizon. But I think sometimes when we talk about tech, we bore some of the people in the regular stream. So I think a few hours.
What's in the sump?
A few hours every week where we just geek out and talk about maybe stuff we've seen, stuff that's on the horizon. I think it'll serve us well. This is our little like geeking out thing, so why not?
Hey, before you go, I don't want to interrupt you, but before you go, did you hear from that girl?
I did not.
So no one heard anything from them.
I gotta admit, like Dave, I had some connectivity issues earlier in the stream, and it's only after I came back in I saw that Dave said, "Hey, do you want me to contact her?" So I may have missed my opportunity. So
he's got a girlfriend.
I'll talk to I'll message Dave tomorrow, but no, we did not. I did.
All right, just curious. Just thought of that.
No. Yeah, so I think so next week I don't know what the topic is. I think I'll maybe message and we'll figure out a topic. But I think this was fun. We can geek out on equipment and don't worry about like annoying people too much. We don't have to keep it too kosher. Sometimes we can get down into the nitty-gritty and without losing people, because I think sometimes when we start on the regular streams, when we start talking Apex and how to program your Apex, or EcoSmart Live and how to configure
let it play out. Let it play out. I think it's a topic that a lot of people, like you said, they may be a little bored, but when they need something,
Yeah.
So I think it would be interesting to like help people with like programming stuff. Like if anybody came in and they were like, "Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to program this," even if you don't necessarily know how to do it, like pull up the tutorials or pull up web forms and like try to just walk each other through setting something up.
You know what I am gonna do when I'm gonna edit the description for this, and you know what I'm gonna do next week when I do this, I am gonna publish an email address, and I'm gonna publish an email address and have maybe take some preset questions. So maybe we can answer some questions before we start to geek out too much. So you know what? We'll play with the format as time goes on, but I think I like this. This made my week. Woody's Reef, we should do a stream and ask people what's in their sump and ask,
Sump?
I think so. Yes, I'm eventually thinking that, like, are you happy with this pump and why? Like Scott really put me on the spot there, because listen, and I bet you if you
it was good though, wasn't it?
I bet if you ask me the same question next week, my answer might change. So, but
maybe, but that would be interesting to see why it changed.
You know what? Yes, you're right. Because a lot of us, we get shiny new stuff and we're like, "Ooh, it's the best," and then you sort of, as the shine wears off, you kind of realize, "Oh, okay. Like this flow monitors, when I got them, I was probably going around singing the praises of, "Oh man, it helped me get my flow." And then over time, you realize, like, okay, like,
Do I really care?
knowing that I pumped 300 gallons to the display versus 320 gallons.
No, but that's not really fair. I was going to tell you last time. Listen to me for a second. Like, you learn about your system, something that you didn't know before. Now you're putting it behind you because you don't really need a flow meter to know what you know, but your flow meter taught you that. You see what I mean?
Yep. You're right. You're right. I don't need it. I don't need it because
anymore, because now you know,
Anymore.
and you're used to your system, so you're pretty familiar with what. And is maybe you felt, maybe I'm not putting words in your mouth, but just tell me if I'm wrong. But maybe you felt that now, okay, you know, it's not really, you know, that significant, but okay, you satisfied your curiosity, you know what your system is, and you know what I mean?
Yes,
Couldn't you put a 1 gallon jar though underneath your return and then just like count how many seconds it takes to fill up?
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Also, another thing I learned, Rip, is that one of the things I like the flow meter is also to say, hey, when my return pump gets blocked, I can see that, hey, you know, it's not pumping as much water. But you know what I realized, that with the new Apex, if your return pump gets blocked, like there's another way to accomplish the same goal where you can just monitor how much power, because if a snail gets stuck in your pump,
That's not the same though.
It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. But one of the things, you know, as I talk to CJ and over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to CJ a lot on streams. One of the things I'm realizing that if I have something that does 85% of the work, I don't need to spend another $200 to get me that 10%. You know, look for solutions for stuff you already have that gets you most of the way there before you go out and spend more money that, you know, that just gives you a little extra. Sometimes that little extra might be worth it, but what I'm finding is that I get excited about stuff and spend money on it when maybe it wasn't necessarily needed.
Yeah, we call it diminishing returns.
Oh. Yeah. Somebody's asking me what equipment do I have in my sump. Hey, and also another thing too. I literally, when I swap sumps, I have 2 5-gallon bucket full of crap that I took off my tank. And, you know, so my sump is a lot more simple than it was before. A lot more.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Not necessarily a bad thing. Not necessarily a bad thing. Robert Fowler. Hey, what equipment do you have in your sump? I want to pick your brain. I also have a 350, and I'm trying to fit a Skims algae reactor, my skimmer, and Miracle Bud. Ooh. All right, Robert Fowler. I'll take 5 more minutes and take your question.
All right. Well, I got to run though. I'm going to talk to you later, man.
All right.
All right. See you, Scott.
All right. I think over the past year, I've had so much stuff in my sump. Right now, I changed my sump last week. All I have is I have about a 11-gallon refugium. I have a skimmer. I'm using a Tunzi 9410 DC skimmer, and I have a return pump. I have a reactor in case I need to run carbon, and I ATO, and that's it. I have nothing else in my sump. At one point, I had a Vertex Omega 180i skimmer. I had a 2-gallon refugium. I had a Pax Bellum Chaeto reactor. I had ozone. I had another reactor. I had Miracle Mud. You name it, I probably had it. Robert Fowler said, how did you get an 11-gallon fuge? I actually, I bought an entirely new sump. Synergy Reef actually makes some sumps that fit directly into the Red Sea tanks. I think it's 10 or 11 gallons. It might be closer to 10. But Synergy Reef actually makes a sump that fits right under the Red Sea Reefer. But the cool thing about the Red Sea Reefer is there are so many companies. There is a thread on Reef to Reef called Red Sea Reefer Series. It's in the Red Sea section. People have modified these tanks so much that There's a company called Reef Dreams that sells these little acrylic baffles that you can make a refugium in the sump. Or, what I did is I drilled the ATO container and sort of pump water into it with a manifold and there's so many ways you can do it. So many ways you can do it. So many things you can do. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Just take a thing and look around it. There's also another guy here named Pelfrey that has a 250 that's done a lot of mods. I think you've seen here in the chat Reef Keeper. He also has he has a Red Sea tank that's bigger than mine. I think he's over the next couple of months, he might be doing some mods. So, just keep an eye out. There's a lot of people in here. Go sub Reef Keeper, REEFKPR. There's another guy in here who's on YouTube called Pelfrey, PELPHREY. These are people that have Red Sea tanks that have, sort of modded them or are going to be modding them. So check them out, follow them. They're going to be doing some interesting things. He's asking.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to say he's asking for a link to the Hangout. So let me
I was gonna say, like, one of the most useful things, like, when people are, I mean, I remember when I was setting up stuff, what to buy, what's the best thing to buy, and then you want to set something in, like, if you have to set something up and you don't really have, time to plan it out, and you're at the store, or you need to buy something. Stuff like this kind of live stream really helps people because it gives people giving direct information to other people, like just what happened right now with Loops and Woody in the chat. Like Woody knows about the Tunzi, and Loops is asking for the information. If I got that right, I just read that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's very helpful to be able to ask somebody instead of having to look it up on the net and say, hey, what do you think about the blah, 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 blah? And in 2 seconds, you got your information. It's very, very, very useful. And yeah, I think maybe some people will find this boring, but, like, it's not a picture of a tank and all that, but it's very useful. Very, very useful.
He's saying that's listen. I gotta admit, this is the tech stream, but as you can see, this is why I had to thank the mods at the beginning, because sometimes without Steve and without Dave and some of these guys, I am absolutely lost, because these are the guys that keep everything moving and do the links for me. So, that's why I spent 5 minutes. I spend 5 minutes kind of thanking these guys, because they make this stuff possible. They do a lot more. Sometimes stuff happens that you don't see, and they're the ones that kind of handle stuff in the background. See Dave. See.
Dishwasher. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, I'm gonna jump over to my tank and flip my camera around. Yeah, so what I'm trying to do is I'm moving my tank in a couple weeks, so I want to get it planned out ahead of time, the new equipment that I'm going to stick under here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me turn the light on. But what I want to try to get away with is keeping this same skimmer here, adding the skims reactor. I have this DIY reactor, and it's been doing okay, but it's just been a little bit of a headache. These light strips keep somehow getting moisture in them and breaking, and then it seems like it's leaking a little bit too. So I want to get rid of that, and then also give Miracle Mud a shot.
All right, so let me see what you have to the right. You're using the stock ATO, right?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I think you can fit the Skims Chato reactor in there.
Well, I already measured it, and I really wish it would fit in this section here, like in front of my return pump, but it won't. Even the smaller, the 127, that one won't fit.
Interesting. Will it fit in the big section there?
Yeah, it's about the same size as the skimmer there. It's about 7.5. But do you guys think? Go ahead.
No, UN. I was going to interrupt you. UN, you finish your question.
Well, I was gonna say it's about the same size as this, and what I was thinking about doing, but I don't know if it's safe to do, because I'm gonna get rid of this. This I just run it temporarily. It's a little carbon reactor. If I just want to clear my water up or whatnot, is putting a bucket in here and running the Miracle Mud in the return side. But I know you don't really want that stuff stirred up in your tank, and I'm afraid that if it's on that side of the baffle, that it'll just get pulled into the return pump a little bit and go up into my display.
There is a there's a guy on here called Reef Community Worldwide. He has a different type of reactor, but he actually runs Miracle Mud in a reactor. So
oh wow.
Yes. So I mean, he has a different type of reactor. He has more of the reactor where the water just cascades over the side. But his channel name is Reef Community Worldwide.
I'm gonna go type that in my computer so I can remember that.
Yeah, he has a huge following on Facebook, and he does live streams all the time. So make sure to sub him up. Reef Community Worldwide. But I think one of the latest videos he actually put out was how to run Miracle Mud. He's a Manchester United fan, just let you know. So just totally ignore that. But
okay.
Yeah, Reef Community Worldwide, and I think the latest video he put out is about running Miracle Mud in a reactor.
Yeah, I actually do have a big reactor over here laying around too.
So check out that video. And about the Skims reactor, yes. About the Skims reactor, absolutely. I love Chaeto reactors. I'm running.
Did you get a Skims reactor?
I don't have one, but I was using a Pax Bellum reactor before, and it worked great for me. Yeah. Oh, your tank's looking nice. Yeah, I was using a Pax Bellum, and it's working great for me. I just wanted to do the full Triton method, and that's why I sort of swapped out the sump. But Chaeto reactors, yeah, as long as they're set up right, they aggressively grow Chaeto.
Yeah. Well, my DIY one here was growing it a lot, and I'd probably have to harvest every 2 weeks. But these lights, this is the third one I bought, and I keep buying them. I guess you guys can't really see too well under here. It's wrapped with those lights, those hydroponic lights.
Yep.
And I keep buying the most waterproof rated ones. I can't remember what the rating is, but the best waterproof ones, so to speak. And for some reason, I don't know why, but if I plug it in right now, the same thing keeps happening. Like there's a short in the system. I might have to set my phone down for a sec.
They're not waterproof. I've learned that where they might say waterproof, but I don't think they're meant.
Well, I'm not even submerging it.
Yeah, it's still yes. I had the same issue you had with the lights, and then another thing you have to be careful is the Red Sea cabinet isn't vented properly, so there's a lot of moisture under there. If you notice, like we only have that little hole towards the back.
Yeah,
the
return.
Yeah, the Red Sea cabinet isn't vented properly, and so the skims. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had issues with mine also. So once you have the, you know what happens with the skims, the lights are in the middle, protected from moisture, so they never actually touch water. So yeah, I recommend the skims. You can put it in the back and put the skimmer to the front, because chances are you're gonna be harvesting, you're gonna be emptying the skimmer a lot, more. Well, it totally depends on you, but absolutely, the Chaeto reactor.
Oh, I see what you're saying. For maintenance, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I've worked them. I've used them. They absolutely work. I love them. I know Billy Pipes is using one, but guess what?
I know. I'm waiting for him to update his review on that. I've been kind of bugging, actually.
His system is so clean. I don't think he's growing Chaeto very well.
No, exactly.
Yeah, because I've seen Billy's tank in person. Billy is like he's almost OCD. He keeps his tank clean. He watches what he feeds. He's very meticulous. He's not like me that just dumps a handful of food and watch what the fish do with it. He's very,
that's what I do too.
Yeah. So you and I might need to oversize our filtration and our skimmer a little bit, because we just we overfeed. So I think the skims one, if you can fit the big one under there, I would say go with it. But yes,
I noticed Billy runs the smaller one, and I was kind of wondering that too. And I actually commented on one of his videos, but I haven't heard back from him. If he wishes he would have gone with the 157.
He doesn't, because his system is even too clean for the small one. But what you can do is, if you find that the big one is pulling stuff and then your system is clean, then you just turn the hours per night down. Start off with 12 hours per night, which is standard. And if you find that your system is too clean, then you can also run it at least run less hours per night. Instead of 12, do 10, and then down to 8. Another thing with Chaeto reactors is, because they grow Chaeto so aggressively, you might have to start supplementing stuff for the Chaeto. Like, I find that sometimes the Chaeto uses up iron and molybdenum and some other chemicals that I can't pronounce. But
yeah,
you might find that the first 2 or 3 months it works great. It just grows Chaetos like nobody's business, and then after that it just stops and starts growing some like weird algae in it. That's because probably there's some nutrients that the Chaeto wants, but it's already used up, especially if you're not doing regular water changes anymore. So you have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I never had that issue previously, but I'm just worried that if I go with the bigger Chaeto reactor, then I most definitely won't be able to run Miracle Mud.
Yeah, no, check out that video, and still I tend to want to upgrade. I tend to want to buy bigger than I need, and if I need to, I just turn it down or run it less hours per night. That's just my personal philosophy. That's what I like to do, because if I buy a smaller one and then I need a bigger one, I'm gonna be pissed. But if I buy the big one, I can always just run it less hours per night.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that video to see how that guy went ahead and used it in a reactor. I just wonder if it's as effective in a reactor, or maybe it's more effective.
I'm actually, yeah, I have the same reactor he does, and I just, it's just that I just changed the sump. I just did a huge water change. So I didn't want to do too many things to my system one time until I got a Triton test back. So I'm actually gonna run Miracle Mud in the reactor the same way he does. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet.
Yeah. What do you have? I don't know if you're by your tank right now. Do you have? I'd like to see your sump.
I am not by my tank right now, but let me see if I can pull up a photo I took. I haven't even got a chance to make a video yet, but let me see if I can pull up a photo of my. Okay, it has. I have like this weird Chaeto grow light on it, so the color, might be a little weird, but if you're looking at it now, I'm showing you a Google shot of my sump.
Okay, yeah. Wow, I like that a lot. I'm jealous of that.
Yeah, so this is a Synergy Reef sump. The first chamber I think is 10 or 11 gallons reactor. I'm using shout out to Dave Nanotanks. That UFO grow light is ridiculously loud, and him and Reef Keeper sort of helped me buy a new fan for it. And Dave actually swapped the fan for me, so now that thing is dead silent. So I have like the first chamber is Chaeto. Second chamber, I can adjust the skimmer level. I have like a Tunzi skimmer there. Third chamber, just my ATO and my return pump. And maybe you can't see it in the photo, but right where in the second chamber where you see like a bag, my reactor is there. And I already, the Miracle Mud was delivered. I think it was delivered. I'm just, system. I just put the sump in. I just did a huge water change. I'm sort of waiting for everything to settle down before I made a New Year's resolution in front of everyone that I wouldn't make too many changes to my system this year. So I'm trying to stick to it.
So how much did that sump cost you?
Well, retail, the exact sump is $400.
That's interesting, because instead of getting the bigger reactor, I could go that route and use the built-in. How tall is that sump? Is it a little bit taller than our stock sump?
Let me go to the Synergy Reef website, and it's called the Triton TS26 sump, and
Triton
it
TS.
is 26 sump is 26 by 15 by 15. So when you fit it in the you have a few inches on each side.
Yeah, the only thing you lose at that point, I guess, would be that auto top off, which is pretty small anyhow.
Yeah, I'm using the Neptune auto top off, but 26 by, and by the way, if you need them to, I think if you need, they can change the sump dimensions, but I think if you need them to move like a baffles here and there, they can do it. For instance, in my application, I had them drill, well, it's hard to see here, but in the summer, I need to run a chiller. So I had them drill some extra holes. So I can, whenever I put a secondary pump in to run my chiller, I can just, put the hoses through these holes. But yeah, I do like this sump. And it comes in a couple of different colors too. It comes in, oh, you know what? That photo is actually of my sump before they shipped it out. But it comes in white, green. They can make it for you in a couple of different colors. I chose the black and red.
I guess I don't know if getting that sump, because even for you, you still can't run Miracle Mud within the sump. So
no, well, I'm doing the Triton method. So I am doing the Triton method. So I prefer to.
You're trying to abide by the guidelines and everything that they set.
Yes, but I also recognize, there's a lot of people on here that are talking about the benefits of Miracle Mud, especially with their SPS and polyp extension. So I am going to try it. I don't
think you're supposed to run Miracle Mud with the Triton method. At least I believe that's what I've read.
Yeah, you're not supposed to, but I'm going to try it.
Everybody has their own method.
I've always used Miracle Mud. I've always used Miracle Mud because as a substrate for like growing pods and having like a productive refugium, to me, it's the best substrate for that. I've experimented with a lot of different sand particle sizes, but there's something about the mud, the Miracle Mud particle size, that actually does a good job of allowing pods and other microfauna and worms and stuff to breed and populate and proliferate very easily. So I love it for that. So this is actually.
I wonder if it would still. You'd still get all those benefits, although you're going to be using it in a reactor.
I don't think I will, but I'm still willing to experiment because I see so many people I trust saying that they've seen the benefits from running it in the reactor. So I'm willing to try it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Listen, you know what? The guy who you said, I think he's on vacation this week, so he might not do any live streams this week. His name is Paul, Reef Community Worldwide. Sub him up, and the next time you see him do a live stream, come on in and have him, and talk to him and ask him and get it straight from him why he runs Miracle Mud that way, and look at his tank. Like look at some of his videos and look at his tank, and you can't argue with the results.
Yeah. No, I am going to be running Miracle Mud one way or another, so.
All right, man. I'm gonna try and get a. Oh man, I have so many videos in the works. It's, wow. So I'm gonna. You know what? I'm actually gonna try and do a video within the next week or two about changing up the sump and the transition from one sump to the next. So look out for that. Keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I definitely will, because that was my second option, is basically switching out this sump. Another idea I found is I saw people run a sump section in their dry area, not so much a sump, but like a refugium. And I saw somebody drill like with a keyhole saw right through the middle of that solid board. So they would just it was like a 13-gallon refugium on the dry side here.
In my, oh man, let me see if I can pull up another picture. But I drilled the ATO, and let me see if I can pull up. I drilled the ATO and put some bulkheads and actually,
I saw you do that. Your old auto top off.
Yes.
I like the idea, but I just feel like for the size of the tank, it's not very valuable. Well, it's a 2-gallon refuge,
Yeah, well, that wasn't my only fuge. I also was running Chato reactor, but guess what? I have 2 mandarins that do not eat frozen foods, and my 2-gallon refugium was producing. Look at it now. I'm sharing my screen, so hopefully you can see.
Yeah, I've seen your prior video when you did that, and you showed a close up, and they were just crawling inside of there.
So yes, so my 2-gallon fuge is, is producing enough pods to, feed 2 mandarins in a 75-gallon tank. So something is working here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm more interested in using that though for like nutrient export than pod growth, because I get really good pod growth even inside those algae reactors.
Yep. And the next thing you also should think about is, another thing about having a 2-gallon refugium. I still think the Chaeto reactor is a good option, but even more so than thinking about just the size of the refugium is also putting a little bit more effort into the light, because I think having the proper light actually does make a difference. Like I was using a UFO grow light, and I was growing so much Chaeto. It's just that the UFO grow lights have so much spread that I was growing algae everywhere. Like my skimmer got algae growth. I was growing hair algae all over my sump. So all in all, I know we've spoken about a lot of things, but all in all, I think the Chaeto reactor, in your instance, it looks like you don't have an overstock tank. I think the Chaeto reactor is a good option. I liked using a Chaeto reactor. I think that's a good option for you.
Yeah, I think that is what I'm going to do. I'm just trying to find space, and I do want to experiment with Miracle Mud on top of that, but I guess I'm going to check out that video and see if I can work something out or what I think about running it in a reactor.
Yep. Also, I don't check. There's a company called Reef Dreams that makes baffles.
Yeah, they don't make that anymore. On their website, it says their machine's down and production's been paused. And I've had my tank here for about a year, and I've been keeping my eye on ordering one. They've been out of stock for about 6 months.
Interesting.
The other problem is those are over in the UK, so they're hard to get for one. The shipping's a bunch, and then now you can't get them at all.
Really interesting. I would think there was another company in there's another company in the US who could just make baffles to do that.
I'm sure I know a few of my guys in like my local club who have CNC machines, and I could probably get them to custom make one. But that still doesn't really help unless I can make that baffle just like the Reef Dreams one is, and you make that whole front section of the sump your fuge. Could I run Miracle Mud underneath my algae that's floating?
Yes, absolutely. That's the way to do it.
I was gonna say, like, you could put the Miracle Mud on the bottom of the. You were showing under your tank. You have the ATO box.
Yeah.
How
I can't run it under there because that's where the return and the socks are. I feel like the flow is too high. It might kick it up a little bit.
I'm gonna share my screen again, but look at what this guy's. I don't know if this is the Reef Dreams baffle kit, but you can absolutely you can absolutely do something like this, like
that is the baffle kit.
Yeah, that is the okay. If you have friends with a CNC machine, then get the measurements and do this. Put the skimmer in the back, and then you can run Miracle Mud, and you can always the thing is, like, with the way these baffles are set up, you can still take your socks out. I didn't run my filter socks anymore. I eventually just pulled them off my system and didn't bother about filtering particulates. But yeah, think about it. Especially if you have friends with CNC machines where you can sort of go through, try different things and try the cheapest option first. If it doesn't work, then all you've lost is just some time and some pieces of acrylic.
Yeah.
Yeah, a UFO grow light, is.
I'll probably get one of the Kessel, like an H80, or maybe I think they make like an H160. I'll probably buy a quality light for the future if I do that.
I would not go with the H80. I would absolutely not go with the H80.
Why is that?
I think for the punch it provides, you can absolutely get better lights. Man, I'm also working on a video of this. I feel like I'm working on a video of everything. I've actually, I've over the last 6 months, I've been buying a lot of these different refugium lights, and I've actually been buying a lot of these refugium lights. And for the month, you're going to pay $120 for the Kessel H80. That's a small one, H80. And
yeah, I had the A80 before, and I can already kind of see where you're coming from. It wasn't very bright. I was pretty let down by it.
Yeah, it's not even about bright. It's about the see the H80. I actually liked because I'm just a Kessel fan. But the thing about it is, I bought this $20 light from Amazon, and I compared. Oh man, I'm trying to find the graph right now. Jeez, I've been keeping this graph and making a video. But anyway, I bought a $20 grow light from Amazon, right? And when I I took spectrographs, and when I overlaid it, like you had really maybe there's some spectrum that the Kessel is hitting, but the one from Amazon cost $20, and it had like the numbers below the Kessel, like it had more par. The spectrum was slightly different. The PER was like 5% off, but it's sort of what I was talking about in the earlier, like a few minutes ago to Rip. Like, am I willing to spend an extra $150 to get something that's 5% better? You can spend $20 and get yourself 85-90% of the way there. So look for some of those indoor plant grow lights on Amazon. They absolutely work.
Par 38?
Par 38 works also. Yeah, par 38.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm kind of to the point where I'd rather spend the extra buck. Like some things I'm with that logic on, but if my theory is that if I'm only going to use this little section as a refugium, I think that the reactors are a little bit more efficient because the water's forced through versus this space. That I want to maximize it by getting like the best light. Like I am willing to spend the extra to get 100% performance out of this. Some things maybe not, but that I am.
Yes, but what I'm saying is the H80. Not saying the Kessel.
I won't get the H80 then. Maybe like the Kessel 360 version, or I think it's like the H360 or 380.
That one I have. That one absolutely is worth the money. That is absolutely 100% worth the money. But the H80, it's not worth the money. You'd get better performance. You'd get, if you're gonna buy the small one, you might as well buy the Amazon grow light. It'll work better. You might as well buy one of those circle UFO grow lights. It'll be $30 and it'll grow better. But if you're gonna upgrade to the big one, the H380, then hands down, that's probably the best refugium grow light you're gonna get.
And those are what, like $350?
$300, $299.
Oh wow, that's not bad actually.
$299. You can use a goosenet, or what I did is get one of those tension rods. I have an old gooseneck for my old 360, so you're good to go. You have everything you need, man. Try it.
And then at that point, I can run the Miracle Mud underneath, and I don't really have to make any major mods.
Yep.
I'm just worried that that's not going to be as efficient as the reactor. Like I just think reactors, you can't beat their efficiency because the water flow is forced through it, and it's complete 100% contact.
But on the other hand, where you're talking about putting this thing, every water that's coming over the overflow, everything that enters the sump has to pass by your algae, is forced to pass your algae. So imagine when you have that. Yeah,
but I just feel some gets around instead of being forced right through the middle of like a big, thick ball of algae growing. Mm-hmm. But that is a high flow area where most of it will hit it.
Yep. I just think versus the reactor where, not everything that gets put into the sump is gonna be, forced through the reactor.
Actually, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That is a good point. So even though you're getting more contact, but you're getting less contact 100% of the time versus more contact 50% of the time.
Yeah. What I usually try to do is to tune my overflow, whatever's going to my sump, is to try to tune it to what my skimmer, not more than my skimmer can handle. Listen, either one of the solutions, I think it's up to you. It's more of a personal preference, but I really think either one of those. When I have multiple solutions, I guess my thought process now is, let me do what's cheaper, because if you do the baffle and it costs you just a few bucks to get the acrylic, and your friend has a CNC machine, and then you buy an Amazon grow light, you've basically invested like whatever the acrylic cost and a $30 light, and a $35 light. You've only invested 65 bucks. And that way, if it doesn't work, then you can say, oh, it was only 60 bucks, rather than go spending $300 on a reactor and then, realizing like, oh, this doesn't work, and you're $300 in. That's my thought process. Maybe yours is different, but
I like that thought process, but more recently, I feel like I've always DIY'd everything, and I'm getting to the point where I have a little bit better of funds just in general. That sometimes I end up going with like 2 or 3 different DIYs before I ultimately say, fuck it, let me just get the best thing. And then I realize, man, I should have just got this all along, saved the headache. I'm almost to the point where I've spent this much money anyway.
All right. So you have your decision then, man. Make sure.
Yeah.
Do you make videos? I'm going to sub you up. So,
I've made a couple, but I don't too frequently. I want to start doing it again, though. As soon as I get my move over with and my tank reset up, I'll try to.
All right, so you have your 8th subscriber, so I'm going to be following along. So any video you up now, I also hit the notification bell, so any new video you put out, man, I want to be one of the first ones to know it.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, your videos really are actually what kind of inspired me to pick up this 350.
What?
I just love, I've been watching your videos for probably a year and a half or so.
What? I didn't realize anybody watched my videos, man. Maybe I should make more.
Right? There you go.
I appreciate that, man. I really do appreciate it. And you know what? I think I'm gonna start doing this every Thursday at about 9:30 Eastern. So, next week, man, please don't hesitate to jump in.
Yeah, for sure. I know it sounds like you guys were trying to wrap up, but right when I hopped in, so maybe I'll let you go.
Listen, but this was good, though. This was actually good. I think if I was on the fence about doing this, I think you kind of pushed me over the edge there.
Oh, for the live stream, yeah.
Yep. Hey, Rip, anything to add, Rip?
Nothing, just listening along, watching, But I was thinking before, like, is there any space in the back of the tank? But I'm seeing there's none now, so.
Yeah, just the overflow box on these.
Yeah, the one
no space in there?
No, not much.
No, I have like my heater in there. That's it. Like there's enough space for that, and that's all.
Yeah.
I was thinking like for your miracle mud, like you could put if I don't know the Red Sea, so I don't know. We don't use that here. So, but I thought maybe there might be some space to put a tray of miracle mud down in the bottom there or something.
The other thing is you have to maintenance the miracle mud. I think you change out 50% every, I think it's 6 months. So if I put it back there, it'd be really hard to get that.
You'd have to have some kind of a acrylic tray that you lower down inside there, making it easier to change. But I don't know. It's just an idea, man. I don't know.
Hey, wait, Robert, you've modified your plumbing, man.
Yeah, I want to know what happened is I got a great deal on this tank. The guy I bought it from, he had it, he was running it with fresh water. I don't know. He just kind of went overboard. And when I bought it for $800 with the tank, the gyros, the skimmer, at the time I'm running Radeons now, but at the time it had 2 AI primes, all for $800. Well, when we lifted it onto the truck, he didn't lift his end up and he snapped the at the bottom of the bulkhead. So that bulkhead that comes stock on these is like one affixed bulkhead. There's like 3 pieces that are all affixed to one plate. I had to break it out of there and redo the plumbing.
Oh, see now,
I like it.
see, you have to make a video about that because we've all been scared with this tank and thinking that if we broke it, like it's the over with. But the fact
It
that
was a bitch to dig out of there. It was really hard to do.
it doesn't matter. The fact that you did it is, like you're making me feel better. Not that I'm going to be careless now, but you're making me feel a lot better that if I break it, it's not the end of the world. Another thing that you're going to love about that guy who I'm telling you, he has an awesome SPS tank and he's running the same lights as you are. He's running 2 Radeon. He has G3s, but he's running 2 Radeon XR15 G3s, and he has an awesome SPS tank. So,
is it a 4-foot tank?
Yeah, he has the same tank we have. He's running the 350.
Wow. I don't know. I'm interested to know what he's running his percentages at because I had these for 2 months now, and I got them up to 85% with the diffusers.
So here's, like I said, sub him up, and he does these live streams all the time. Sub him up and hit that notification bell. So he's on vacation now. He's from the UK.
I'm probably subbed to him. I'm subbed to like every single. Maybe I just don't realize it.
Yeah. So when so sub him up and hit the bell. So when he goes live, you'll see, and because you can ask him. You can ask him to share his schedule. He'll happily share his schedule with you. Yeah. Whenever you see him on, man, or just jump in and he could tell you all about his tank and what he's doing. He has a very nice tank.
I'm gonna sub to him as soon as I get off this call for sure and do that.
All right.
Does he have the red C2?
He has the exact same tank we have, man. Black and everything.
Oh, awesome. Sweet.
Yep.
All right, I'll let you go. It's like every time you talk fish with friends, I invite somebody over to buy a frag or trade a frag, and like 3 hours later, we've already said goodbye 10 times.
Yeah. All right. It was good talking to you, man.
Yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
All right, later.
Hey, Rip.
See you, man.
All right,
Yes,
Rip. Everybody in the chat. It was good talking to you guys, man. Loved it.
All right.
All right. So CJ, Tom Reefman, American Reefing. I know you guys just joined, but this is the end. I'm just doing a roll call. CJ, Tom Reefman, American Reefing, Roscoe, Woody. Woody, thanks again for the super chat. Loops LA, John Gale, Dave. I know Dave, Reef Keeper, Steve, Bubba Shinobi did a good job of moderating for me tonight. I saw you knock a couple of trolls down. CJ, we caught a couple of trolls. Yep. Everyone, Danos, Charles, Exclusive, thank you for jumping in. Scott, that was here, Peltwork, thank you for dropping in. John Gale, Rip Van Winkle, John the Bubble Tip, Aussie Dan, how we doing? Coons Corals, that name is so funny, Coons Corals. All right, guys, I am tired. I need a drink. I'm gonna go grab a beer and go to bed.
All right, buddy.
All right.
I'm out.
Hang on a second.